You cannot use this road without a permit.
Have a nice day, sir.
You know, the other guys don't do this, the guys with the white trucks. How come it's always you brown guys? And I don't mean that racially.
The whole neighborhood is falling apart these days.
Hello.
Hello.
What's your name?
Otto.
Otto?
O-T-T-O.
I'm Abby. O-T-T-O.
Okay, hi everybody. Welcome back. I'm Mason.
And I'm Matt.
And this is episode 4 of Double Feature, the only podcast on the internet, probably, where we review a current film and then each propose another film to pair with it for a double feature.
And then we debate those.
And we do a great job.
Probably the best.
I think so. I want to start kind of on an unrelated note. A couple of episodes ago, we talked about High Plains Drifter, and that got me back into a Westerns kick. And recently, I revisited The Magnificent Seven, which I know you've seen.
Yes.
Why can't Hollywood come up with these ideas anymore? Why can't they make great original films that are not in any way based on anything?
You're talking about the Denzel Washington one.
Yes, no, and totally not the one with Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen.
And not the one with Toshiro Mifune.
Oh, wait, was that The Magnificent Seven?
Sure was.
Was it? Oh my goodness, now I'm embarrassed. So, on a completely unrelated note, we watched A Man Called Otto.
Wait, I have
Yes.
same episode. We talked about The Last of Sheila.
We did.
And I did not make the note then, but I remembered at some point watching something that I forgot to mention that the costumes in Last of Sheila were done by Joel Schumacher. And another note on last episode with Horns, we were wondering about her hiding the note that's in Morse code.
Right.
But we forgot to note that it made a lot of sense for her to hide it from her father because he's David Morse.
Oh, that's terrible. Since I brought up High Plains Drifter, I completely forgot to note that the screenwriter on that was the guy who wrote The French Connection.
Oh, wow.
And a bunch of other things. I forgot that. Anyway, so we're talking about A Man Called Otto. That's our current release.
Yes.
Which is based on, I guess depending on how you want to think about it, it's either based on the 2012 novel, A Man Called Uve, by Swedish author Fredrik Backman, or it's based on the film, I think from 2016, of the same name, which is also a Swedish language film. But this is the American remake of this story.
It's also based on many insurance and long-distance telephone commercials you might have seen in your lifetime.
Possibly.
And car commercials.
Possibly.
There are probably only a few things we can't reveal where we shouldn't reveal. Obviously, we have the power.
Yes.
But there are a few things we probably shouldn't reveal about the movie. But mostly, I think we can spoil a lot of it without spoiling it. Because a lot of, I think, the fun of the movie is the laugh lines and interactions of the characters, the emotional things, the actual story turns.
Yeah, and I don't think we can really spoil those.
Those are mostly kind of broad.
Yeah, we can talk about those, absolutely.
This is from the director of such great films as Quantum of Solace, Mark Forster.
Ooh, ouch. Okay.
If you hack down a tree in the forest and... I don't know. In the Forster.
Does anybody notice or care? Yeah. So...
It made me wonder how many commercials Mark Forster's directed over the years. Between movies. I'm guessing a lot.
Has he directed commercials?
I don't know. So many movie directors direct commercials you don't realize direct commercials, like David Lynch and Errol Morris. And
a few years ago, I watched literally everything I could get my hands on, including a lot of those commercials from Lynch specifically.
Even David Mamet directed commercials.
And I know about the Nicholas Winding Refn Lincoln commercials with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, those are Winding Refn? I didn't even know he did those. Yeah. I know those commercials.
At least this is what I've heard, and I've never bothered to check because it's just too perfect. If they're him, it's great. The only thing they're missing is neon. A lot of violence and death.
Speaking of Lincolns and Matthew McConaughey, he was the Lincoln Lawyer.
He was.
And now Lincoln Lawyer is a TV show on Netflix, which stars one of the guys from this movie.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Who does it star?
He's Tommy, Marisol's husband.
Oh, Manuel Garcia-Rulfo?
Yes.
Okay.
He's in this movie, like, they've made him look schlubby with a mustache and like clothes that hide his chiseled features. There are a couple shots towards the end where you can tell he's in good shape, but on Lincoln Lawyer, he's like Mr. Sexy.
Whereas here, you're right, he is like suburban dad.
Which is like a real blow to anyone who thinks they can get into acting without being really handsome. It's like even when they have a guy that doesn't need to be handsome, they cast this really handsome guy and just ugly him up.
Yeah. And his character is from El Paso.
Ah, that makes sense.
Or Anaheim, because he says both.
Yeah.
During his introduction.
Yeah, he says he's from Anaheim, then he's like El Paso.
Yeah, that's kind of... So let's start talking about A Man Called Otto. The Man Called Otto is Tom Hanks, who is in his early 60s. He works at a steel plant.
He's an engineer.
Yeah, he's a widower as well. His wife died a few years before the events of the movie. And we open on him buying a length of rope.
Yes.
Okay.
Which immediately put me in mind of the Norm Macdonald joke. One of his stand-up routines on Netflix, once again, he's telling a story and he's like, and then you find out everything you knew was a lie. He's like, can you imagine if you actually found out everything you knew was a lie? It might send you down to the rope store. And so when I saw him buying the length of rope, I immediately knew what it was going to be for.
Yeah, they don't really try to hide it. Well,
no.
they do a little bit. Because the whole debate that he's having over buying the rope is he wants 5 feet of rope. And they're going to charge him for 2 yards. He comes from an age where people bought rope by the foot and not by the yard. And he does not want to pay for more than 5 feet. He does not want to pay for that 6th foot of rope, man. No,
he gets in a big debate about prorating the cost of 2 yards of rope.
And at one point, the guy behind him throws it, it's like, I'll pay the extra 30 cents or whatever it is. And you could just, before he even said it, it's like it was already going off in my head. It's not about the price, it's about the principle. And then he says something very much like that.
One thing I noticed about the movie in general is it kind of works on people who want to anticipate what a joke is or beat is going to be. Like if you're a person who gets a big kick out of, oh, he's about to do this, that's this movie.
Yes. Before we actually go any further into the movie, how did you like this movie?
I give it a mild thumbs down.
Okay.
Very mild.
Like a 40%?
Yeah, it was watchable, and it's one of those movies, it's so manipulative emotionally, and so many parts of it were so schmaltzy and didn't work for me. A lot of the humor didn't work for me. A lot of things in the movie didn't work for me. But then as time went on, I was like, you know, I really didn't hate A Man Called Otto. It could have been worse. It was watchable.
I'm coming from the opposite side of the spectrum. I mean, literally, because you're a mild thumbs down and I'm a very mild thumbs up. I laughed, I think, a fair few times more than you did. Since we saw the screening together, we can actually compare this one. I laughed a few times more than you did. About half the time I laughed, I hated myself.
I kind of wished the movie had riff tracks.
Oh, that would have been so much more entertaining.
Yeah, because there were so many times I thought of making fun of the movie. But then it does have a few times I did laugh.
Part of it, though, we did actually see the movie with a decent crowd. I think the theater was like a quarter full.
Yeah, and it was a weeknight.
Yeah, it was a weeknight, and most of the other people in the theater were oldsters who were there, probably Tom Hanks fans who were just looking to check this out, or they'd seen the trailer on TV and they wanted to come watch it. They were laughing a lot more than both of us.
Oh yeah, it was a crowd pleaser.
And they goaded me into laughing a couple of times when I might not otherwise have done it. At least that's my story, and you can't disprove it.
So in addition to Tom Hanks and the man from Lincoln Lawyer, who all is in this?
The one I noticed immediately when she showed up was Rachel Keller. She plays Tom Hanks's wife, and no, this is not, like, Rachel Keller's in her 30s. This is not a May-December thing that's going on here. She plays the younger version of Tom Hanks' wife in flashbacks.
I recognized her as well, though I couldn't immediately place from where.
Well, I haven't seen her in anything since Legion went off the air, and I know you're not much into TV superhero.
I saw the pilot for Legion. Maybe that's where I saw her and just it stuck in my mind.
Yeah. You're not much into TV superheroes, and up until about a year ago, I was addicted to those shows, including all of the CW things, before I finally just couldn't do it anymore.
I thought I recognized Mariana Trevino, who plays Marisol, but I don't know that I actually did. It might have just been me being racist. Oh, and Mike Birbiglia as the...
Oh, that's right. He was the
real estate man.
Yeah, he was the guy in the car.
He's kind of he and a character we never meet named Chris are the villains in the movie.
Yes, and that's actually, I like that. That's pretty decent casting. We meet Otto buying rope at the hardware store. Why is he buying the rope?
Because he wants to hang himself in his home, which is a drab, depressing home in a drab, depressing housing complex that was kind of like a weird setup in itself, some kind of gated community.
Literally a gated, but a very,
houses.
very small, like we're not talking gated community in the sense of people live here who have 7-figure incomes or 7-figure net worths. We're talking about a gated community in the sense of a modern sort of planned community from what, the 60s or 70s?
Yeah.
Where every house is pretty much the same and they're all in duplexes right across, right down the same basic street. There's one street and then some sheds off of it for cars and storage, and like that's the community.
I remember seeing these kind of houses and condos in Oxnard, California, and thinking that I hadn't really seen something like this before, but they were far less depressing than these seem to be. Was this an aspect of the other film, the Swedish film?
Yeah, so this is one thing that we might as well get out of the way. Matt has not seen the Swedish film on which this one is based. I actually did. When it came through our town some years ago, the Museum of Art put on a showing because it was up for the Best Foreign Language Film category at the Oscars. So they brought it in specifically as part of their Oscar month programming, and that was when I got to see it. And the answer is yes.
It feels like something more of a product of a small foreign country.
It is, but even so, the gated community that we're talking about, the gated community that Uve lives in, as opposed to the one that Otto lives in, actually looks a lot more like a neighborhood. You still have planned houses, that's true, but like you have multiple streets that are going off in different directions, and it's not just one street where all the front porches are facing each other.
So in addition to him buying this rope, subsequently we see him at work, and he's being retired against his wishes. And they're having a goodbye party, which mainly seems like they're the ones who really want rid of him.
This was the moment when I was really afraid I was going to hate the movie because everything was broad in the worst possible way. They might as well have started all of their lines of dialogue in this scene with "as you know." Well, as you know, Otto, this is your retirement party. Well, as you know, boss, I didn't want to. Well, as you know, this is your replacement. Well, as you know, I trained him. Remove the "as you knows," and that's basically the dialogue from this scene, and it's really not good.
It's not good. I don't think we ever revisit that building.
No.
And another thing I didn't like about the movie was that, he's depressed and he's in his blue period, and so we have this whole desaturated blue and gray world.
Yes.
That we only break out of in flashbacks. And we're just stuck in this ugly world the whole movie.
Ugly is the perfect word. It is an ugly community. It is ugly lighting.
The hardware store is ugly.
Yeah.
His steel mill or whatever is ugly.
But he actually does have a kind of a second job.
I would have welcomed the Joe versus the volcano mill he worked in.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I was going to later. Yes. Especially when it comes to a movie that has color.
Oh, yeah.
And looks nice. And is a little more genuinely funny and deep than I think this one is, although this one thinks it's plenty deep. So he does actually have a second job, though. He has his first job, the job he actually gets paid for, is at the steel mill. But his second job, the job he takes on for free, is to be the one-man volunteer constabulary for this little gated community. He puts all of the trash in the proper bins, and he makes sure that people aren't driving down the street, and he basically issues citations for people who are parking without permits. He is a stickler for the rules, this man. He is a bureaucrat.
A big-time stickler for rules. He reaches into the various sortings of the wastes and waste baskets and resorts them when people have messed them up, reaching into filthy waste.
Now, without having seen A Man Called Uve, do you think there's a scene like that in that movie?
No.
There is. There is. He actually does go through the trash and sort it through. It is surprising how similar these movies are.
Ah.
But there are a couple of differences that I promise to bring up at certain points.
Okay.
But you do get the same scene of Uwe going through the community, writing notes to people, and checking the gates, and reestablishing his control over this little community. You would think after, like, forced retirement, this would be enough to keep him going. Because he clearly enjoys hating other people.
Yes, this is, hating people and finding fault with people and calling people idiots.
Yes.
Are his big sources of fun.
He's great at that.
So I wondered as the movie progressed if we weren't supposed to suspect, and I think we weren't, because there are certain times where he's far closer to death than others, if it wasn't all a cry for help in a way.
I think that's fair.
I think maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was. They never give you a clear picture of that.
I don't think it was meant to be.
Yeah, but it kind of felt like it was at times.
Yeah.
So we also see him in his drab home.
Yes.
And we see him change clothes in front of a mirror, much like Mr. Rogers, which we see many times in the movie, him changing clothes in a Mr. Rogers-like fashion. And he looks more like Mr. Rogers in this movie than he does in the Mr. Rogers movie he starred as Mr. Rogers.
Yes. Which is ironic, because no one would want Otto to be their neighbor.
No. He also is shutting off all of his utilities.
Yep. We have a scene where he calls the electric company and has his electricity turned off. He cancels his phone service. He turns off his gas heat, which I guess is very topical these days.
Yes. Does he have a cellular phone?
I don't think so.
He does everything kind of in an analog, old school kind of way. He's got all these things written down and stuff. And this kind of struck me as interesting because anyone I know that's in engineering is kind of a gadget person and would be more. I would think they would have embraced more modern things.
Yeah.
Unless they thought something was like really perfect, a perfect system, and the new way was much worse in some way. Which Otto might.
Otto might. He has that personality.
He does.
He cancels all of his stuff. He mounts the rope from a hook he has installed in the ceiling of his living room.
Without checking the tensillary strength of the ceiling or anything. This was my first cry for help thing when because I immediately knew what was going to happen. I was like, it's not going to hold. Mm-hmm. This roof is going to not hold this noose and hanging system, and he's an engineer.
But we don't actually, that doesn't actually get tested at this point.
No.
Because as he is slipping the noose around his neck and getting ready to topple himself off, he looks outside his window and he sees a couple moving into the neighborhood, and the husband cannot back their car up with a trailer. And this offends his soul. So he takes the noose off of his neck, runs out his front door, and does it for them. And it's at this point that you wonder how committed he is to suicide.
Yes, that's right.
Because literally, if he had just kicked the stool over and everything had held, but we'll come back to that. If he'd kicked the stool over, he wouldn't have had to worry about that anymore. He wouldn't have had to worry about anything anymore. So why? I don't know.
I don't know either. Well, there's another element to this where it does make you question whether or not he wanted to commit suicide. And we'll get to another thing he does later that makes you question, because he does seem to want to go out on somewhat of a happy note, even though he's so unhappy. Like here, it's like maybe seeing that as his last sight of this terrible world, seeing another evidence of incompetent idiots, just was too much for him to bear as his last moment. He needed it to be somewhat sweeter, though I'm really grasping.
Yeah, I think the movie is too to be fair. So who is outside? Who are these new neighbors?
Marisol and Tommy.
Okay, and who are Marisol and Tommy?
They're a Mexican-American couple, with Tommy being more American and Marisol being more Mexican, though they're both Mexican-American, I believe.
I think so.
And they are moving into the gated community. I believe they are renting their home. Mm-hmm. And he helps them and is unhappy with them, cursing them out to himself in their car, and realizes they also have 2 young daughters who are in the car.
That was a fun scene. He gets in the car to back it up. He turns around and boom, there are the kids, which we haven't seen them before.
No, it's a reveal, and we know now that what the movie will be.
Yes.
That these people are going to be so warm and full of life that they're going to save Tom Hanks.
Yes. Another question.
Teach him to live again.
Teach him to live again. Another question. Is there a scene like this in A Man Called Uve? Particularly where he turns around and sees the kids in the back seat.
Oh, is there?
There is. And it's handled better. In this movie, like, it's played for comic timing. Tom Hanks turns around, and there are the kids. There's a shot on Tom Hanks' face. We take a beat. Oh. We go to the kids. Oh. In A Man Called Uve, Uve turns around. There's 2 kids in the back seat. You say, hi. He says hi. And that's it. No comic timing. It's just like, oh, of course they're in the car.
In A Man Called Uve, did one of the little girls have an obsession with playing with pro wrestling dolls?
No, there were no luchador dolls
Yeah.
in A Man Called Uve. That's more culturally specific.
Yeah. I also think if maybe the year that A Man Called Uve came out versus the year this came out influences some choices this movie makes.
Possibly. I think that's definitely true, and I think I know what you're talking about, and if you are, then I want to get there. But in A Man Called Uve, we have the same basic situation. But it's Swedish, so most of the immigrants into Scandinavia right now who are coming to escape their problems in their culture or find a better life, they're coming from the Middle East. Yeah, you do in fact have that couple. Instead of Marisol from Mexico or Central America, I can't remember where, we have...
Yeah, she might have been from El Salvador or something.
Oh, she was from El Salvador, that's
she
right.
was not Mexican-American.
Yeah, but Hispanic, definitely.
Yes.
Instead of Marisol from Central America, we have Parvane from Iran.
Ah.
And her husband, who is very Swedish, and their 2 daughters. So, again, different dynamic, but the same basic thing.
So he helps them, and they give him some chicken with mole. Mm-hmm. Are you a fan of mole chicken?
I've never had it.
It is not my favorite. I love food in general, but if there's one thing I've learned, it's that mole chicken is not my favorite. Now, I have some mole sauce, which is also not really my favorite. What I do is when I make chili, I put just a little... I make this lentil vegetarian chili because I don't love beans and I love chili, and I went through a phase where I was vegetarian. I hit upon this very complex, very time-consuming recipe I make. I will tell the audience it's the greatest thing you'll ever eat in your life. But there's a hint of mole in it because I was like, I need something a little bassy in here. And mole is not a spicy, thin thing. It's like a thick paste. It looks like mashed black beans, more or less, or the exteriors of them. It's a dark kind of base, not kind of taste.
Okay. So you would not have eaten these?
I probably still would have eaten it. I mean, come on.
Yeah, she does seem nice.
And I eat food. Yeah. Free food.
Free food, cooked, and it's made with love.
That's right.
Which is something...
She has a very, effervescent personality.
Yeah, it's something that Tom Hanks' character is desperately in need of, is a little home-cooked love.
Yes.
Aside from the attempt to hang himself, how else does he try to kill himself in this movie?
Well, his next idea is to go get a length of hose. And so, which we don't know, we just know that he goes to his neighbors, who are played by an African-American couple of working actors, neither of whom are big names. And the wife, he mostly deals with the wife because the husband has had a stroke or some such.
I think it's a stroke, yeah, and it's left him basically, he's not paralyzed completely. He is capable, he can move his eyes, he can make small facial expressions, he can grab with his hands, but yeah, he mostly just sits there.
Yeah, and stares out the window. And they have a son who's missing named Chris, that we'll get to in a moment, I guess. But so Tom Hanks knocks on their door. He demands to be returned a hose that they borrowed like a year before.
Yes.
And then he goes, and while the wife goes to get him the hose, he goes and talks to the husband, who can't talk back to him, or we think really react. And he tells him what he's going to use the hose for. Or he doesn't really tell him. He tells him that he's going to leave forever, pretty much.
And all of everything will be his problem. The history between these two characters is they moved into the neighborhood at about the same time as two young couples. Tom Hanks' Otto and Sonia, and then Reuben and what was her name? Anita? Otto and Sonia, Reuben and Anita came into the neighborhood at the same time, and as it turns out, Otto and Reuben had very similar personalities. They had very similar interests. They were both kind of sticklers for playing by the rules. They kind of ran the little gated community, and then they had a falling out. At that point, my impression was the wives continued to interact, and the husbands were too proud to have anything to do with each other after the falling out. They may not have spoken really in some time.
Yet they borrowed his hose.
Well, as you do.
Yes.
So why did they have a falling out?
We get to this eventually in the movie.
This is great.
In a series of cuts. There are a lot of times in this movie where I wondered more or less, and it bothered me less the more time I was removed from the theater, but I wondered why such a bright, beautiful woman as Sonia fell in love with this Tom Hanks Otto character when he was younger even. Because as we see, the more we learn about him, the more he's always been a grouch and a jerk. His only thing is he has a degree of decency and mechanical know-how.
Yes.
And so what happened was that he and his neighbor, they liked cars.
They loved cars.
And Tom Hanks repeatedly bought a Chevy. And then maybe at the beginning they both had Chevys. And then Reuben switched to Ford, or maybe always had a Ford.
Oh no.
And this started the rift.
Oh no, Chevy versus Ford.
And there was maybe another thing somewhere in there that happened, but the big cutoff thing was that Reuben bought a Toyota one year. We see in a series of flashback to bringing us up to present, them opening garages and seeing these cars over the years.
I will go ahead and tell you there is a similar explanation for the rift in A Man Called Uve, between Uve and his neighbor Runa, not Reuben, Runa. So what are the two car brands that drive them apart? Do you want to take a guess? Remember, it's Swedish.
So we got our Volvo.
Yes.
Is it a Saab?
Yes, it is! Yes. And would you take a guess as to which one Uve is? Is he a Volvo man or is he a Saab man?
I'm guessing Volvo because he loves safety.
Other way.
Other way?
Other way.
I would have thought he was for the safe Volvos.
No, it's one of the things that A Man Called Uve does better than A Man Called Otto, and I didn't think we would get here at this point. It has some flashbacks showing young Uve growing up with his dad, who is also a really big, and we don't really get that in A Man Called Otto.
No, we get mentions of the dad. We know that we find out the dad was important to Otto.
Yeah, but only because Otto tells us. We have no other way of knowing, but we actually see that connection in this film, and Dad loves Saabs. Dad is a big Saab fan. There is no better auto manufacturer on earth.
We find out in this movie that his dad loved Chevys.
Yes.
Through words.
And it's the same basic thing. Dad loves Saab, so the kid loves Saab. Dad loves Chevy, so the kid loves Chevy. Yep, same thing.
Probably in the novel.
It probably is. As I was going through it, I was kind of surprised because it really did feel like I was watching the same movie with some slight cultural, contextual tweaks. I really did feel that way.
But Reuben and Anita have this missing son, Chris.
Yes.
Who has moved to California or somewhere and somehow has gotten their power of attorney.
Yes.
And is maybe in league with the real estate company that wants to tear down their gated community and build condos, and which is a classic movie thing, the evil condo developer. You know, there was one time there was a great condo developer builder who was hated by the villains of a movie and was the champ. Can you remember this great film?
Tell me again.
There was one time there was a hero in a movie who was the condo developer, and the people that didn't want his condos were the villains.
I don't remember this.
Caddyshack.
Oh.
Al Chervik.
Boy, it's been ages since I've seen that.
Hero condo developer.
Oh, when I think about Caddyshack, all I think about is Bill Murray and that gopher.
Ah, you're missing the best parts of Rodney Danger. I mean, almost every part of Caddyshack is great, but I would say that Bill Murray is like kind of far down the list of good things in the movie. I would say that the things that happened at the Caddyshack with Brian Doyle Murray are probably funnier than Bill Murray. I'd say that Ted Knight is hilarious.
Well, he always is.
Yeah, Chevy Chase is excellent in the movie, which you can't always say. And especially Rodney Dangerfield is the best part.
Yeah.
But really,
there's
whole
another
movie
one
is
you
good.
can't always say Rodney Dangerfield is the best part of it.
You take that back. Rodney Dangerfield is a reason to watch anything. Like, if you just see his name's on the list, you're like, oh, might as well throw this on.
It's true.
He's a god.
Back to School. Such a great movie.
Yeah, it's a good movie.
It never gets enough credit.
My dad and I watched one called, like, My Six Wives, some low-budget direct-to-video movie where Rodney Dangerfield moves into a Mormon community, maybe once again to build condos or something. He's a construction magnate. Never heard of it.
Okay.
Ends up being pretty funny.
Okay. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah. We also watched The Godson with he and Dom DeLuise in supporting roles, which was not very good.
I thought you said Rodney Dangerfield was a reason to watch anything.
That's why we watched it.
But it's not always a guarantee of quality.
It was not a good movie.
All right, well, fair enough. Okay, so where are we on A Man Called Otto?
We've kind of skipped around.
We have.
So at some point, he tries, what he uses this hose for is to try to kill himself in his garage with his car. And this was the second time I thought maybe he doesn't really want to kill himself, because another thing aside from, he just had to kick that stool out, but he decides to go help these people. He decides to try to find a good radio station to put on to play him gently to sleep to die. And a man as filled with hate as Otto, I would think would just want silence. Another weird choice, or maybe he did want to die because instead of, if you're a 60-something-year-old man or you're yourself, if you're trying to figure out a song to go out on, wouldn't you go to a station likely to play a song you know?
Mm-hmm. Some sort of oldies station?
Yeah, or classical or something. He plays some song we've never heard before that's probably being released for the movie by some, sappy folk rock modern musician, and we get to hear, 3 times in the movie, either it's different songs by the same artist or the same song, or songs that sound incredibly similar. All terrible if they're different songs.
Yeah, not good. And this is one of the things Uve has over Otto. He actually does try to go to sleep in silence.
Yeah. Now, if he was trying to kill himself because he was in physical pain, I could see you try to get boozed up, listen to some music you like, take too many pills, and call it a life. Or gas yourself or something. But in this case, he's doing it out of pure depression and hatred of life. I don't see him trying to find the perfect song.
It doesn't really fit his character. But again, the whole attempt does not take, because as he's drifting off, choking to death on the fumes of his beloved Chevy, someone bangs on the door outside to try and get his attention, and instead of being committed, he gets out of the car and answers the door. And again, the same thing happens in the first film. The same basic idea. I wonder if they're trying to pitch Otto a certain way. He is the guy from the generation, you see somebody trying and failing to back up a trailer. You go out and you do it. You drop what you're doing and you go out and help. Somebody knocks at the door, it's rude not to answer, even if you are trying to kill yourself. You take care of them first, and then you go back and choke on your own exhaust.
Cut off all of your bills so there's no mess after you're alive.
Yep.
Tie up all your financial loose ends.
So no one else has to worry about anything. It's all taken care of.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen maybe what Otto was going to eat instead of that. Well, I mean, he was going to die, but what he normally ate, and that maybe he finished the last bit of ketchup out of his refrigerator before he kicked the bucket or something, just had some empty refrigerator.
Because a man like him, he is going to have everything measured down to the teaspoon. He's not going to leave anything in the fridge to rot. I agree. So we've got this family of immigrants moving in across the street. We have the next door neighbors who have a long-standing acquaintance. Other people we meet in the neighborhood, we have, I can't remember.
There's a guy
his
named
name.
Jimmy or something.
I think it is Jimmy, who goes around and
does wacky walking to try to get his steps in every day.
Yes, he's jovial.
He's from the Ministry of Silly Walks.
Yes, and thank you for reminding me of something else I would rather have been watching. Monty Python would have been great. Yeah, Jimmy's characteristic is he exercises weird, he's overly jovial, he's always hungry, and always inviting himself over to other people's houses to enjoy their cooking. And then we have a trans kid who was...
It's a female to male trans who goes by the name Malcolm.
Yes. Newspapers? Is that how we meet?
Delivers, maybe not newspapers, some kind of like advertising, door-to-door advertising.
Okay, so like
Because Tom Hanks
circulars.
takes her to task throughout the film, or takes him to task, takes
Right.
it to task throughout the film for being in such a bad racket and to make money, and then he says, well, I have these two other jobs, and that kind of wins Tom Hanks' respect that the kid has 3 jobs.
Because again, exactly. He comes from that generation, does Otto, where
I never realized the kid
work
was
hard.
trans until it was brought up in the movie. I just
explicitly in dialogue. I
Yeah.
didn't either.
because like pubescent people can look so much alike, I guess. Anyway, I just thought it was a boy.
Yeah, me too. 17, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere around there, 17, 18. Like, definitely. Anyway, so that's pretty much the whole neighborhood. You've got the family across the street, the family next door, the
Yeah, these are
wacky
the principles
neighbor,
of-
the circular delivery.
There's the lady that dresses in pink and has the dog, and her husband, who isn't. They're very little in the movie.
Yeah, and
her husband likes to work out and wear really tight workout clothes and do a lot of stretching, which offends Otto.
So much.
Otto feels that it's a sexual assault seeing the guy stretch.
So their little rat dog.
Yeah.
That also ties into something later in the movie. Their little rat dog ends up having a rivalry with a stray cat who is also hanging around the neighborhood, whom we see at different points next to a shed.
Feeling quite computer generated.
Yeah, although I'm sure it's a real cat.
I think it's a mix.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There's
like
when
definitely
it comes
a
out
real
of that
cat.
box, the way the eyes stretch. I mean, I know the cat's eyes do that and stuff, but I felt like we were watching an effect. And then we get one of the best parts of the movie, maybe in this scene, when he gets out of the car and the cat's under the car.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a little later, and the cat does something very uncat-like and grabs onto his pant leg with both legs, and he just refuses to let go, and he drags it around. Do you remember this?
I do. My cat has done that before.
Oh, really?
But not ever to that extent.
I've never seen this.
It
made me laugh. I'd like to see it in real life too.
Well, I wouldn't like to have it happen right now because I'm wearing shorts. If she grabs onto anything...
It was very cute.
If she grabs onto anything right now above my sock, she's hitting skin. And that's not good for me.
But I was certain it was not a real cat.
Yes, but the cat becomes important in the movie. The minute you see the cat, you know already this is going to be Otto's Cat.
It started making me think of like other actors who could have played Otto, and I came up with two. And one version of the movie you've kind of already seen, and I think it was more fun with this actor. And the other version of this movie you will never see because of circumstances, and it's a worse version of the movie.
Yes.
The better version of the movie is as good as it gets with Jack Nicholson as Otto.
Yes.
And Jack Nicholson would have been a great Otto. And him with the dog, putting the dog in the mail chute or whatever, laundry chute, and as good as it gets was gold. And
Yep.
the worst version of this movie stars Robin Williams.
I swear I thought you were going to bring up Clint Eastwood for one of those.
Oh, well, there's a reason why you think that, because this is kind of similar to Cry Macho in a way.
I was going to say Gran Torino.
Oh, that's what I meant, Gran Torino.
Yeah, this is Gran Torino.
That is what I meant, yeah.
Gran Torino Part 2.
Yeah.
With Tom Hanks. Yeah. Tom Hanks gradually, against his will, gets hooked back into the neighborhood. He finds himself giving driving lessons to Marisol. He finds himself, let's see, what else does
Trying
he
to save Reuben and Anita's home from being stolen out from under them by Chris and the development company,
and that's
which
the
is called Die America, or
Yes.
Die America, which no one would ever name their company in real life. It's pretty broad.
For exactly the reason, because he says, when I hear it, I think, Die America.
Yeah, it's like,
Well,
duh, everyone would.
It basically already is what he says to his wife, who's not there. He's talking to her gravestone.
Yeah, he goes and visits his wife's grave and talks to it, which we get a great pull away at some point from with the song again. Mm-hmm. Oh gosh, that song. Which reminds me, the only times we really get colors in the movie are when we go to the cemetery and when we're in flashbacks. Flashbacks of when his wife was alive and they were meeting and things in the late 60s, early 70s. Mm-hmm. I guess this would be... We get the impression it's Vietnam era. Though, for this movie's love of not wanting to offend anyone, Vietnam is never explicitly mentioned.
Yeah, but it's gotta be.
There's a one line... I thought about this when I was watching it, because he goes for a physical... Can't get into the army when he's a kid. Then he meets her on the bus back by returning her book of The Master and Margarita, which I forgot I should... I was going to listen to an audiobook or something of it in between this recording, and I forgot about it to see if it related to the story. She says something about being over there when she thinks he made it into the army, or that he's in the army at first, and she's like, "It's so brave of you to go over there."
Yes.
And so that's when I was like, oh, they mean Vietnam.
They have to.
And then they never bring it up again.
Yeah, they have to, right? It must be Vietnam because it's way too late. He's way too young for it to be Korea. Mm-hmm. And it can't possibly be anything later and
but
still make sense.
Because we as a society, we have conflicted feelings about Vietnam, and this movie doesn't want us to offend anyone. His want to go to Vietnam to fight, he clearly wanted to get into the military, means it can never be mentioned in the movie.
Right. He is classified 4F because, ironically, and this is a joke in the movie that I have no problem with spoiling, I forget the exact name of the medical condition.
Something about
I have it written down here.
Something.
Yes, he has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy.
My bad.
Yes, it is a ridiculously long name. What it means is...
He's the anti-Grinch.
Yes.
His heart is 2 sizes too large.
Which, given the way he's behaved through the whole movie, when that gets dropped like 30 minutes from the end, that's what that means, that's what that condition is. It actually is a joke by that point. And it does work, and I did laugh.
I didn't laugh at the actual explanation. I laughed at Marisol's reaction to the explanation,
Which is way too broad.
I enjoyed it. I liked her performance in that scene, and I liked them going for it to that extent. I'm not being snide. I actually genuinely was like, you know what, I kind of like how into this she is. She really goes for reacting to that, and I was like, I dig it. I dig it.
And you know, fair on her, because she's had to put up with a lot from Otto by that point, and if you had to put up with this grouch of an old man for what must be literal months, at least, and then that's the punchline that drops on you.
But he's also, they put him through a lot. Like, they make him their babysitter when they want a date night out. Like, he watches the kids.
But that's adorable.
Yeah.
Although it is not
They're really
something...
helping him with that.
Yeah, of course they are. But it's not something Otto would ever do.
Taught her to drive.
Yeah.
You know, he's done a lot of big-hearted things for them in a way.
He has. And while he was at their house watching their kids and falling asleep reading to them, you know, he took the time to install their dishwasher.
That's right.
Which was nice. Again...
Tommy is not mechanical, the husband.
Well, yeah, and that's kind of the movie's whole... You know what else this reminded me of? And I actually did briefly consider this as my double feature, which it's not, so I can go ahead and talk about it. The Intern, with Robert De Niro and Anne Hathaway. It's got that same punch of, well, this older generation... They've been around the block a few times, they know what's what, and they can just do things that us younger guys simply cannot.
Yeah, Robert De Niro would not have worked in this movie. In the scenes where he's warm, you'd have been like, wait, he just seems like a creep now.
But he would have been great as the Grouch.
Oh yeah, he would have been great as the Grouch, but that warmth in the middle, the having the heart too big, by the end you'd be like, I don't think so. I think that this seems phony.
So, what are we forgetting?
I think those are the major... Well, his next suicide attempt is to try to jump off a subway platform, or a train platform onto train tracks.
Oh, yeah.
Which, right before he does it, another guy falls off, or maybe he's going to commit suicide.
He has a heart... No, I think he's got like a heart attack, or he's had a temporary like dizzy spell. And
he's an older man.
Yes. So Tom Hanks goes down onto the tracks, helps him,
saves him. And people capture this on their phones and put it on social media.
Yes. And then he stands there, though,
for
like a minute.
And then another hero saves him, and it's never brought up. No one cares about this second guy who saves Tom Hanks.
No.
Like, he's this decent, like, hard hat guy who's middle-aged but younger than Tom Hanks, helps Tom Hanks.
Yep.
That guy just disappears into... oblivion.
So we have Hanging 1, we have Hanging 2, where, and we already implied this, I don't think it's a spoiler, where the noose and the fixture it's attached to
that's right.
pull out of the ceiling.
Yeah, he falls out of the ceiling and onto the ground. And then he has to, like, deal with living in his home with all the utilities shut off.
Yes. So we have Hanging 1, Hanging 2, we have car exhaust, we have subway platform, and finally we have shotgun blast to the face.
Yeah, which I wish I'd seen more of. I went out for more soda pop at this point of the movie and came back in, and all of a sudden he had a shotgun pointed at his own face. I was like, oh man, I kind of missed my part of the movie.
No, you missed nothing. That was it. What you saw was what there was.
Where do you get the shotgun from?
He had it because he's old.
Okay.
And they have things.
That's interesting that he had a shotgun. That does surprise me. I thought for sure I'd missed him having to borrow it from someone.
Nope, he had the shotgun. Yep, shotgun blast to the face, which fails because Marisol starts banging on his door and distracts him, and he loses focus and tilts the shotgun, the muzzle of the shotgun away from his face, and it goes off next to his ear.
Now, I think before this point, or shortly after, Malcolm, the trans kid, gets kicked out of his house by his dad off screen and comes and starts to live with Tom Hanks, and we find out that Tom Hanks' wife Sonia was a teacher who was the first person at school to accept
to use
Malcolm.
the preferred name.
Yeah,
right.
Of Malcolm, and to accept his choices. Mm-hmm. And the dad has kicked Malcolm out for being a girl dressed as a boy and not liking sports.
Yeah.
Which, to me, it's like, so is his problem that the daughter doesn't like sports? Or if you're going to dress like a boy, you better like sports?
That's a good question. So it's at this point, I have another round of trivia for you. Is there a similar scene in A Man Called Uve?
I'm guessing there isn't a trans kid in A Man Called Uve.
There is not, but there is a similar scene, and it makes so much more sense. In A Man Called Uve, Uve gets acquainted with a gay kid who is closeted. He wears a little makeup So the people kind of
that
suspect.
would be pretty passe in 2000. I can see why they changed that now to a trans, because it's like that would be kind of a passe thing in 2022.
Yeah, the novel came out in 2012 when I think it would have been a bigger deal, and the adaptation was 2016.
Still not a huge deal, but it was before the transolution.
Yeah, but my problem with the change, okay, I understand from the writer's perspective, right? You want to do something else. You want to take another letter from the LGBTQ acronym and give it a little representation. If that's your choice, okay, fine. Like, I get it. But it doesn't make sense. And both of us looked at each other at the same time in the theater, and I think we were thinking the same thing. It's like, what is going on here? Whereas in the original movie,
I was taken aback by the father's reasons for kicking out the.
No, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. It doesn't make sense. The original plot line makes sense. You say, "You're my son. I thought you were straight. You're gay. I'm kicking you out."
Yeah.
Whatever your feelings on that, like, you can understand the logical progression of that.
Yeah, but this kid is way farther along than getting kicked out today for this.
Kid is out of the closet.
Yeah.
There's no. My question is.
Because the wife has been dead for years now.
Yes, several years. My question is...
Who was the teacher that called him Malcolm.
Yeah. It shows up on Tom Hanks's porch saying, "My dad kicked me out because I'm trans and because I don't like sports." Kiddo, is there an inciting incident here that we're missing?
Yeah, there has to be something between them that happened that day.
Your dad must already know that you're trans because look at you. But I just, and I'm trying to be like sensitive here because I know this is a big deal, but making this change, I understand the impulse behind it, but making this change doesn't make sense. This is one of the places where, and there are actually a couple of things, most of the things from A Man Called Uve that translate over to A Man Called Otto do so with very little disturbance. Like, the plot is the same. And you have, instead of the Saab versus Volvo, you have the Chevy versus Ford. Okay, fine. That tracks. That works. No big deal. But a couple of the changes that get made make the movie make less sense. They had to have the scene. You can see whoever was adapting the screenplay, and I forget, and I really don't want to look at it right now. They felt
David McGee.
Who?
David McGee.
Have I seen anything else?
A lot of middle-of-the-road kind of movies. Life of Pi, which I've never seen. I mean, I should.
Life of Pi was okay. It was okay. So that tells me who I'm dealing with, though. You could tell me the screenwriter thinks I have to have the scene for the story to flow, but they're just not able to quite get over the cultural barriers between Sweden and America. You remember the scene, we've already talked about Otto teaching Marisol to drive, and he's teaching her in his old stick car, and she's having trouble.
Yes, that's another funny thing, is how his car's a manual.
Yeah, because it's the only way to drive, right?
Yeah.
Automatic.
Which I do, that was a thing where, I had a problem with the analog stuff. I was like, no, Otto would totally drive a manual.
Yes, because it's work, and because that's what real men do.
That's right.
So he's teaching Marisol to drive. She's learning how to drive on his stick shift, which is totally going to translate over to the automatic that she and her husband own. But we're going to set that aside for
I mean, you feel like she'd be like, oh, this is way easier.
It's so much easier, yeah. They get to a light. The light turns green. She can't make the car go. There's a pickup truck behind them. The driver gets impatient. He honks repeatedly. Marisol is beside herself because she just can't make the car go. And Tom Hanks, in one of those moments that's supposed to, I think, make you go like, yeah, gets out of the car and tells the driver of the pickup truck off. He's like, this woman is just learning to drive. Didn't you ever learn to drive? Have a little freaking compassion. Come on, man. And then he gets in the car and basically kind of complisalts Marisol. Insult, compliments kind of at the same time. Like, you came from another country, you learned another language, you married an idiot, you have an education, you've had 2 kids, you're going to learn how to drive. Because you're not an idiot.
Yeah, he's like, you've done all of these, so you've accomplished so much, you can do this. I mean, obviously the point is he's trying to instill confidence in her, and it works.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a compliment. It's the best that Otto's ever going to be able to do.
Yeah, it's like you can see this person to him is out of everybody has some kind of value.
Yeah, you're not stupid.
Yeah.
That is Otto's highest level of praise.
Yes.
So there's a scene in A Man Called Uve which plays out almost exactly the same way, like beat for beat. But there is one little key piece of information that can't translate over in a straight adaptation that makes the scene from A Man Called Uve make more sense. In Sweden, apparently, if you are someone who is learning to drive, you get a special license plate. So that everyone knows so that everyone knows you're learning to drive, and maybe they can give you a wider berth. Or if they see you doing something that's kind of dumb, they can kind of give you a little grace, cut you some slack.
So the person could actually know that he was being offensive.
Yes, and when Uwe gets out of the car and chastises the guy behind them, you see the plate, "Didn't you ever learn to drive?" It makes so much more sense.
And this the guy's like, he just wants to go.
Yeah, and we've all had that experience, right? Like, we've been the person behind the person who's doing the dumb thing.
From the hardware store, we know Otto has no problem making people wait unnecessarily. We kind of left out that this line builds up behind Otto in the hardware store when he wants to buy the rope, and the guy that offers to pay for the extra rope is one of, I think, several people at this point waiting their turn behind Otto, who's holding everyone up and through principle.
Well, yeah, Matt, he wants 5 feet of rope. He doesn't need 6 feet of rope. And if you're getting like Steve Martin from Father of the Bride in your head right now, I am removing the superfluous buns, then that's what's going on here. But most everything translates. The plot is the same. Most of the incidents are the same. And where they have to change things, most of the time they can either find a decent analog, like an immigrant from Central America instead of one from the Middle East, or, different car companies that still have that sort of reputation of being rival brands, fine. But this is one of those cases where you really had to find some other way to make this work, and you couldn't, but you needed the scene, so you left it there. And that's disappointing.
Well, I'll tell you who won't be disappointed. The audience for A Man Called Otto. Because they're going to love the line that's in the trailer about how she at some point she hits a Prius. Mm-hmm. She has a fender bender or a hybrid or something, and Otto says, "It's okay. Basically, nothing. You haven't damaged anything of value." And
because it's a Prius.
That's a line that, as much as people aren't maybe going to say yeah when he abuses the driver of that truck, they do say yeah when he says that about the Prius.
Yeah, there actually is. It's not an exact analog, and it comes at a different point in the movie, but Uwe is also not shy about expressing his disdain for other forms of automotive transport. At one point, the woman with the rat dog, whose husband is the exerciser, her analog in A Man Called Uve, her husband drives an Audi, and Uve gets a shot at them, like 4 zeros on the bonnet and a 5th behind the wheel, which is nice. I like that. I heard that line again. I thought, great. I love that.
With the flashbacks, I said that I initially had a problem with them falling in love, and then later on I was like, the movie's a fantasy, and it's a Beauty and the Beast kind of story, where I believe we have maybe Tom Hanks' real son playing Tom Hanks as a young man in the movie.
Yes.
And
not
Chet Hayes either. Not one of his 2 famous sons.
No.
A third son who is not as handsome as Tom Hanks has ever been, and is a doofus, and we find out already a stickler for the rules, and this beautiful, effervescent young woman falls for him. But he's kind of a Beast character, where he's decent on the inside. He's not rich, unlike the Beast, but he sacrifices in one scene when they're already on a date and stuff. I think bringing her the book isn't much of a sacrifice. I think anybody would do that for a beautiful woman if they were like, oh, I'm going to seize the day here. Yeah, in the end I was like, whatever. That's fine. I'm fine with this.
We've talked about some of the minor differences, but there are two major things that A Man Called Uve has over A Man Called Otto that make it the superior movie. And number one is the flashbacks. Because all of Otto's flashbacks, the wife, by the way, in both movies is named Sonia.
It makes sense.
In A Man Called Otto, pretty much all of Otto's flashbacks, with the exception of that one military flashback, involve Sonia. But in A Man Called Uve, a lot of Uve's flashbacks do not. We get to meet him, and that kind of makes sense, because it is A Man Called Uve. We're learning about him.
The title wasn't that good for this movie.
No, it really wasn't.
It could have just been Otto.
It could have just been Otto. We meet Uve as a young boy at his mother's funeral. So his mother dies. We see how much after that he clings on to his dad. We get to see their bond develop. We get to see him become interested in the things his dad gets interested in, get a job at the rail yard where his dad works, and then we watch his dad die, basically right in front of him. So at this point in the movie, like in this whole sequence of flashbacks, we haven't seen Sonia once. By the way, all of these are running when he's in the car, when he's gassing himself in the car. We haven't seen Sonia once. We meet Uve as he goes to sleep in a train car, a broken man, a young man, obviously, after having lost
a
both
lot of his
parents.
flashbacks come when he's like on the near death, I guess, like his life flashing before his eyes, or where he's like starting to have some kind of altered consciousness due to lack of air.
Yeah, I shouldn't say we meet Uve.
Which made me think when they're in the hanging scene, maybe David Carradine would have been good.
Yeah, I could see David Carradine doing really well
in the hanging scene.
Yeah. So after all of these things happen, after we watch him like lose the two most important people in his life,
I mean, he would have ejaculated.
I was so hoping you wouldn't go there. After we see, hello.
Yeah.
After we see all these flashbacks about Uve's life up to his late teens, that's when we meet Sonia. He goes to sleep in a train car, distraught, wakes up the next day to find that the train is moving, and there's a beautiful woman in the car with him. She's like, I would have woken you up. That's how they meet in A Man Called Uve. I would have woken you up, but you looked so cute when you were sleeping. Is basically the line. And he didn't buy a ticket, obviously. She pays for his ticket, and then he goes back and rides the same train every day for 3 weeks.
To try to see her again?
Yeah, hoping. But not to see her, although I think really he does, but the excuse he's using is, I have to pay you back for the ticket. So he's going to buy 3 weeks worth of tickets to pay her back for one ticket. And she processes that in her head. She's like, wouldn't it just be more fun if you invited me to dinner? And then the dinner scene plays out basically the same way.
I see how in the same way that we can't mention Vietnam, he can no longer be stalking the trains to wait for a lady romantically, perhaps, and have the audience
Possibly
in, for
not.
a screenwriter's mind not be like, you know what? People talk about Say Anything being a stalker movie now, so...
Say Anything's not... Oh, never mind. I'm not getting into that one.
Yeah, it's a minefield.
But we see more of Uve before Sonia than we do Otto before Sonia. And that actually helps sell us, not on the relationship necessarily, but it helps to sell us on... It gets us on Uve's side. It makes his grouchiness and his unpleasantness more sympathetic. And it also makes the attachment he has to Sonia, I think, a little more real, because she walks into his life right at the point when he's lost everyone who's important to him. Plus his house is burned down.
Whoa.
And like he's lost basically everything he has. And she walks into his life. And you can see like a drowning man clutching at anything to keep him above water. You can see why he would latch onto her.
And that when she's gone, he's got nothing.
Which we don't get that in A Man Called Otto.
Well,
we don't get that same feeling.
That you probably didn't feel as much because you'd already seen A Man Called Uve, is you get the growing question with Anita and Reuben Reuben's missing son Chris, with how great Sonia is and how in love with them, and how alone Tom Hanks is, you do start to wonder why Otto and she don't have kids as the movie progresses.
Yes, and do we want to talk about this one?
I don't think we should go into it in detail, but that is the big reveal in the movie, is why they don't have kids.
Yeah, and I think maybe we can say fairly that they wanted to.
And there was a tragedy.
Yeah, it just wasn't in the cards for them.
And the tragedy also maybe really precipitated his fallout with Reuben in a way beyond the cars.
Mm-hmm. In a very nice moment of subtlety for the movie, it implies that.
Yeah.
Without actually coming out and saying it.
Yeah.
Which I like. I do.
The tragedy exacerbates Otto's grouchiness in addition to his stickleriness for details and rules, and it also creates his animosity with the Die America.
Yes. And again, the same basic thing happens in A Man Called Uve. The same basic plot line. So if you've seen one, you already know what we're talking about, and we don't need to go further into that.
One thing I did like about the movie is that the tragedy really does affect their way of life, but life did go on for them, and their love did go on.
Yes.
Then I thought that was both realistic and kind of cool.
Yes. I did like that a lot, actually.
You know, in another note on Robin Williams, we did leave out that in addition to going to taking care of the kids for being a babysitter at home, he also drives them to the hospital when Tommy has an accident. He encounters a clown at the hospital. Mm-hmm. There's a whole thing about a lucky coin and him punching out a clown with some weird back and forth in time storytelling. But you wonder, was that done like that in Uve, where you see the aftermath, then they go back and kind of explain it?
It kind of was. You know what wasn't in there, though, was the explanation for the coin.
Oh, he was just an irascible kind of character. In A Man Called Otto, he has this lucky coin, and it ends up in an altercation with a clown, and it's told in kind of a Tarantino-y style that I found maybe stepped on what would have been the joke or something, but at the same time, it definitely provided a chance for the audience once again to be slightly ahead of where the movie is, maybe on purpose, and the audience in the theater was like, oh, it's gonna be his lucky coin, and you're like, duh.
He even makes a point, he's like, I need this coin back.
Yeah. They go way out of their way with that coin thing.
Yeah, they do. I gotta give it to A Man Called Otto. I've been slagging it a little bit. That is one of the moments where it actually does come through a bit for me. Over the original.
That the coin had meaning.
Yeah.
And Otto wasn't just a dick.
Yeah.
But Otto was always kind of a dick, except for when he first met Sonia. That was like the one day of his life he wasn't a dick.
Yeah. And if you really stopped to think about it, I guess, you might feel the same way about Uwe and Sonia. Like, why would this woman fall for this man? But one of the things that the original film does so much better than the American remake is it makes you understand it's not just a passing fancy. He doesn't see her and think, oh, you're pretty. Oh, no, your book. I have to return it. There's a more real connection there. You understand why this man would latch on to this woman at this moment in time and never let go.
Oh, I could understand if I was Tom Hanks' son and Tom Hanks was not my father and I met this woman and she talked to me. That girl Sonia is so pretty.
Yeah, Rachel Keller.
I would have just latched onto her too.
Rachel Keller is so far out of Truman Hanks' league.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Truman.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Yeah, it's like more like why did she latch onto him? But he does have this decency and he does make this sacrifice at dinner that she can see even more value after. It's maybe getting the initial date is more questionable than them having a continuing relationship. But even then I was like, man, I don't know how long you would want to live with Otto as your man.
Yeah, although I suppose he seems to be nicer to Sonia than he is to literally everybody else.
Yes.
There is that. We have jumped around a lot, but it's a fairly simple plot.
But you know, with the big heart thing, one thing I noticed was that in addition to him immediately accepting the trans character, and I guess this is probably an Uve with the gay character and the Middle Eastern character, the Iranian character, that to point out that he has the big heart, for as much of a jerk and as much as he hates everything, he never expresses anything racial.
No.
Like, almost all of his friends and people he connects with in the movie are not white, except for the guy who saves him on the when he's on the subway, who he doesn't connect with or hang out with.
Yeah.
And Sonya, and so it's like a thing where it's like this coding of, you know, he is decent at heart. It's not, he's just not hating people for no reason. Like, he's never like, why don't they learn English?
Yeah. No, he is a fair...
It's the language here.
Yeah, he's a fair-minded man. He hates everybody equally. It doesn't matter what your race is,
that's right.
what your color is, what your gender is, what your religion is. It doesn't matter. Otto hates you.
It does matter if you drive a Toyota or electric car.
Well, yes, Otto hates you just the same. He only judges you based on the things you do, like when you buy an inferior model of car and don't drive it well.
That's right.
And have electronic backup cameras, because real men don't have those.
Yeah. Oh, I don't.
I you know, there's no way around this one. And I don't want to bring it up, but I feel like I have to. The biggest problem with A Man Called Otto is Tom Hanks.
Oh, you think so?
I do. And I don't mean to slag his performance. He gives a good performance. The problem is, it's Tom Hanks. And he doesn't work for this particular...
You don't think so?
Not for me. I guess, and this is
but
maybe
you've seen
more
Olive too, so...
Say again?
You've seen the Swedish version.
I have. And it's not about the role. So, the guy who plays Uve...
Uve.
Yes, is a guy named Rolf Lassgard, whom I have never seen in anything else. So it's not fair, maybe, the comparison that I'm about to draw. A Man Called Uve is also the only Swedish language film I've ever seen, so I have no other baseline comparison.
You never seen any movies by those filthy Swedes?
No, I've seen a lot of Danish cinema over the years, but I never went north.
Well, I've seen a lot of Danishes.
Well, me too. I mean, look at me.
Boy, I love me a pastry.
But Rolf Lassgard, and you won't be able to see this if you're listening, but I am about to show Matt a picture of Rolf Lassgard, and I just want your reaction.
I have a mental image
to
of
the
what
way
I
the
think
man
he
looks.
Probably looks. Oh, he looks more handsome than I thought he would.
Take away the hair.
Yeah, he looks like a Swedish guy.
Yeah, take away. He's got that look. He looks like a grump. Actually, let me give you a picture of him in character.
I mean, I don't know that he looks more grumpy than Tom Hanks.
The problem is that I don't have anything else to connect him with, but I do have some. The minute I saw Rolf Lassgard for the first time, and I still had this reaction on my recent rewatch, he looks like a man that I would not really want to spend a lot of time around. He looks like an unpleasant man. He looks like a man who sucks a lemon on a daily basis, who has had kind of a hard life, and who is willing to deliver some of that hardness back to you for getting in his way. But I look at Tom Hanks, and it doesn't matter what the role is. Like, he's a bona fide movie star, and I've seen him in everything. Like, I look at him, and I see the captain from Saving Private Ryan. I see Jim Lovell. I see... what's his name? Sam Baldwin from Sleepless in Seattle.
I think you're thinking of Forrest Gump.
I see Forrest frickin' Gump when I look at Tom Hanks. I look at him, and it doesn't matter what he is or what he's doing. I look at him, it's like I see the hero in you. You are not just the good guy, you are also a good guy. Because he's done that so many... That's how he got famous. He was like America's movie star of the 90s for being that upstanding,
so you've always said from
decent...
the start of the movie, you know that he's going to end up being a good guy. And
oh, yeah.
It's going to work out.
You cast Tom Hanks.
You know he's going to save the house from the evil missing son, Chris. Did you think...
Yes.
I mean, I guess this is another... because you saw... When you watched Ole or Ove...
Uve.
Did you think that the missing son of Ruda and whatever was going to return?
You know, no.
So I really thought we were going to meet this son, Chris, at some point. When we got to the whole end of the movie with him never showing up, I was like, whoa, that was a surprise. I really thought we were going to see this son. Spoiler, we never meet Chris.
No, we never meet Chris.
Do we even see him as a kid?
We just see Mike Birbiglia again.
Do we ever see, like, kid Chris?
No, we never do.
That would have been interesting.
No.
To see that him growing up and, like, what his weird fashions and attitudes were.
Yeah.
And how Reuben reacted to those, so that his son is now trying to steal his home from him.
Yep. Not a very pleasant little
Might have been
thing
in
anyway.
the movie Fences.
Oh, there's another movie I would rather have been watching.
How would you have liked, like, Denzel as Otto?
Oh my gosh.
Well, that would have been good.
I would rather, yeah.
I mean, he's kind of like that in The Equalizer.
Yeah.
Maybe The Equalizer is Otto with violence.
I could see that. It's just like, when Jimmy Stewart played I can't see Jimmy Stewart playing a really morally gray character successfully. And I
Yeah,
can't.
with A Man Called Otto, I feel
Yeah.
like you get him two things. One, you know from the start, because it's Tom Hanks, what everything's going to happen pretty much in the movie. Two, the movie makes a lot more money because the audience for A Man Called Otto sees the trailer and knows it's the movie they want to go see.
And that is why Tom Hanks is in this movie.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
It works for making the movie a hit for sure. Because
Yeah.
it's like selling a movie on... I mean, Denzel works the same way, though. Honestly, Denzel's the same because you expect him to end up being decent, too. Although he has more of a history of turning out to be a dick and things. One of the great Denzel movies to me is He Got Game, where you think... where it uses that against you. In the movie He Got Game, Denzel Washington plays a guy imprisoned for killing his wife. And then he gets out to try to convince his estranged son to sign with the governor's favorite college as a basketball player. That plot contrivance is super ridiculous. However, what really works is that Denzel Washington seems like a decent guy who's locked up, and throughout the film they show flashbacks and you start to realize he wasn't such a decent guy. And he's got a lot to answer for in life.
Okay. I'm going to have to look this up because I've never seen He Got Game.
Oh, it's one of my favorite basketball movies. I don't know how you'll feel about it.
Yeah.
It's a crazy movie.
Yeah.
It's very colorful, cool looking.
Yeah. I mean, this is a block for me. But it does make A Man Called Otto not work as well, that I look at Tom Hanks and I just, he's going to be okay in the end. He's going to come through. He's going to save the family. He's
Yeah.
going to save the farm. He's going to win the World Series. He's going to stop the presidential assassination. Whatever it is he needs to do, it doesn't matter because
Sure.
he's Tom Hanks. He's not, by the way, half of those things don't happen in this movie if you were starting to get excited. Whatever it is, he'll do it.
The Oklahoma City Gazette used to have a critic who was great named John Picard, who's now passed away. I remember he once, in a review for the movie Legend of Bagger Vance, in the end described the movie as a soggy dump in the pants. And the fact that it's Tom Hanks makes you know from the start that it's a soggy dump in the pants kind of movie. But I think that no one wants to go see the movie where they don't know if the guy turns out to just be a stone cold dick.
Yeah.
That movie's not going to make a nickel. People want that comfort food.
I suppose so, but I think you still get that out of A Man Called Uve. To be fair, I do think the original version is superior. The problem is that American audiences never saw it because they never would see it.
I didn't see it.
It's not in English. So if you want to see it, you either... I don't know that it was ever released in a dubbed version. The version I watched was subbed. So you have to read subtitles. And a lot of people don't like to read subtitles when they watch a movie, which I get.
I really don't. I mean, I'll watch foreign films, but I'd prefer not to be reading the subtitles.
I really do. I do get it. But it's such a shame, though, because you shut yourself out of so many good movies.
You know, the hardest thing with a movie that's in a foreign language is if you want to, like, surf the internet at the same time as you watch the movie on your phone. If you want to mess with your phone and have the movie on the TV, that's really tough with a foreign language film.
It really is. Unless you speak that language, which,
True.
Yeah. If you don't mind hearing an audio track in Swedish and you can handle subtitles, I would recommend checking out the original. But again, for me, A Man Called Otto, mild thumbs up. Mild. Like you said you were 40.
Yeah,
mild thumbs
to be
down.
fair, this is not my kind of movie.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that A Man Called Uve is also not my kind of movie.
I think it would be less not your kind of movie, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think your feelings will track. I think the improvements in a couple of instances are real, but a lot of the stuff is cosmetic. So if you didn't like one, you won't like the other.
Yeah, it's like this is just not the kind of story that attracts me to the movies.
Yeah, but for me, mild thumbs up, like 6 out of 10. It was good. I had a few laughs. Tom Hanks is always good in pretty much everything. So
The cast was good.
they were. Yeah, it was a very well acted, very well cast movie.
So is that it for Man Called Otto?
I think so.
I think we should do your movie next, but I already need more beer.
All right, me
and to
too.
use your facilities.
こんなもんでも作ってると楽しいわよ。ねえ、課長さんもなんか作ってみたら？
For your movie, we're going back to 1952, the year of Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, that was not intentional.
Oh, there are some good tie-ins with our previous films in these films.
Yes, my proposal for a double feature, and we'll get to what I didn't pick later, I think.
Okay.
I'd like to start right in on this. When we walked out of the theater, I turned to you and immediately said 2 movies that I might be thinking about, and I did end up going with one of them, which is Ikiru, which is a 1952 Japanese language film by the master Akira Kurosawa. And I don't know, I could have gone a couple of different directions, and I think one of the tipping parts for me in proposing this as my double feature was my insistence on the foreign language subtitle that I got so irritated with. Why do we have to have a Man Called Otto? Why can't we just watch the original film? Why did this need to be remade with Tom Hanks? And maybe that's why I
Did
ultimately...
Ikiru get you in the mood to watch Magnificent Seven? Since it stars one of the guys from Seven Samurai, from the director of Seven Samurai?
Yeah, so Takashi Shimura, who is one of the great actors, and I know that Toshiro Mifune, you brought him up earlier, he gets the showy role in Seven Samurai. He's Kikuchiyo. He's the guy who is loud and brash and obnoxious, and he's the scene stealer. But to me, Shimura is the actual star of the show.
He's Denzel Washington. He's Yul Brynner.
Yeah, he's the mastermind. He's the chief of the Seven Samurai. And he is the character. I love Seven Samurai, but I love it in spite of Mifune. And I love it because of Shimura.
Yeah, he is the more likable character.
I think so, and certainly the more admirable.
Oh,
Definitely.
of course. Oh, sure.
And of course, he had a long association with Kurosawa. He was in Rashomon as well, and so was Mifune, for that matter. And he was also the professor in Godzilla.
Whoa.
So he's got a long association. He actually was not all that old when they made this film. They made him up to look older.
He does look like he's made up to be older. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I wondered in A Man Called Otto, you said Otto was 62. I thought maybe he was supposed to be an older character. Because if you put him at 62, the Vietnam thing is kind of...
Is out the window?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
I thought he was playing a guy about 75. But then him retiring seemed wacky.
Yeah, that would work better. Honestly.
70-year-old man, maybe.
Uve is actually 59 in his film.
Wow.
He's not even 60, and he looks ancient. Well, that's not fair. I mean, they shaved Rolf Lassgard's head for that, so that does tend to make you look a little older.
So this is kind of an epic version of A Man Called Otto. Well, it's not exactly A Man Called Otto. This is another movie about a man with a physical condition dealing with depression and of having limited time and an unfulfilled life.
Yes, but instead of getting hooked in with the community, and this for me is the difference between the melodrama of A Man Called Otto which is fine. It's very pleasing. There's nothing wrong with it. About the man who gets hooked into his neighbors and they give him a reason to push forward. The main character...
The moral of A Man Called Otto is that having a community of people to love and support and deal with is key to life, is love and love from other people, and no one can do it alone.
Yes, and this is why I think A Man Called Uve is kind of in the second rank of films for me, and Ikiru is in the first. It's the concern of Ikiru is not so much what makes a community, it's more about a legacy and what you're going to leave behind. What have you done to make the world a better place in the time you're there?
I think that the moral of Ikiru is more that happiness in life comes from finding something to spend your time on that is meaningful.
Yeah, I think that's, both are true. Both are absolutely true. So our main character is a man by the name of Kanji Watanabe. He is a pencil pusher.
Oh, we didn't mention Ikiru itself was remade in English as Living, right?
Yes, I was going to bring that up at the end.
Which I've never seen.
Yes, just came out. Our main character in Ikiru is Kanji Watanabe. He is a pencil pusher. He is a mid-level bureaucrat in Tokyo. He's the section chief of public affairs. What does public affairs do? I still don't really know.
No, they never make it clear.
No, what I do know is that they are not public works.
No.
They're not the parks department.
No.
They have nothing to do with sanitation.
No.
And what is this man's job? What does he do? He sits at a desk in front of a long line of other people who are sitting at their own, not desks, but what's the term I'm looking for?
Cubicle?
Not even a cubicle exactly, but yeah, that's closer to it. Yeah. Carrels.
Ah.
They've got little carrels, like the ones you have at college where you could study. The vertical desks with the shelf and the, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so I forgot that word.
Yeah, so he sits
in the library.
So he sits at a desk in front of a long line of carrels, and those are people whose jobs basically are to refer petitions to him, and his job, at least ostensibly, is to handle these petitions and to see that they get to the proper place. But I think his actual job is just to put his stamp on things. Literally, that's all he does in the course of his job. But he is 60 years old, more or less. He's coming to the end of his career. He's coming to the end of his life. He's looking forward to his retirement bonus.
He's been saving.
Yeah, but unbeknownst to him, at the beginning of the movie, he has stomach cancer.
We are told this in the first shot of the movie.
Yes, we know it before he does. And so it's not a surprise to us when he goes to the doctor. But before he actually sees the doctor, there's this great scene. And admittedly, the narration does kind of mark this as a creakier movie. If you don't like old-fashioned styles of filmmaking, Ikiru is not for you. But there is this great scene in the hospital waiting room where he falls in with this guy who basically tells him exactly what the doctors are about to tell him. It's like, oh yeah, I had a friend who had cancer, stomach cancer. If you have stomach cancer, they'll tell you it's a mild ulcer. They'll tell you, oh yeah, don't even worry about it. It'll clear itself up. We don't need to do surgery. And if they tell you you can eat whatever you want, that means you only have a year to live, maybe less. Before we even get into the doctor's office and the doctor tells him all of those things in a slightly different sequence, but you can see him deal with it. But before that even happens, in the waiting room, there's this great shot where Watanabe is kind of moving chair by chair away from this chatty guy who's telling him something he doesn't want to hear. You get the sense on some level he knows his number is up. He doesn't want it to be true. He's trying to get away from, but the truth just keeps following him and keeps chatting him up. He doesn't want to hear it, but now he is 60 years old. He basically finds out he has a year to live, maybe less. We find out from the doctors in a separate scene that it's actually probably about 6 months. And he's faced with the total emptiness of his life. What does he do? What can he do to bring his life some meaning? That's the basic through line of the film.
And then he goes in various pursuits of trying to find this meaning or kill himself. And he doesn't want to tell anybody that he's dying.
No, and that to me rings as true. This is actually my kind of, this kind of review I think is almost as much of a personal revelation as it is about the film. I am one of the people who will whine about getting a paper cut, or if something falls on my foot and like bruises a toe, I'll be like, oh, it's really, and I'll go around and I'll tell like 20 people much longer after the pain is gone. But like if something is seriously wrong, I don't want anybody to know.
That is true of you.
Yeah.
I know this of you.
That's true.
This is actually not a false revelation. That's good self-diagnosis.
Well, thank you. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but we're gonna.
It's just a statement.
It is.
Oh, well, maybe not so much the complaining about all the time. You're not always complaining.
About the little things.
I know. You're not always complaining about the little things that I know of. But with something big, I think you do keep it to yourself.
I try.
Like if you had stomach cancer, you might not tell me.
That's true. If I had stomach cancer, I probably wouldn't tell my cat.
Now I'm looking at your stomach and I can see the cancer.
Well, I haven't yet started to get to the point where I can't keep any food down, so...
Let me just say, I'm going to say many, many positive things about this movie.
Okay.
But just from the start, my review for the movie on the whole is, I saw this movie at an art house theater in Oklahoma City in like 2002, 2001, somewhere in there, and never again, and never wanted to again. And my main remembering of the movie is just feeling like I was trapped somewhere that I wanted to get out of. And I think I fell asleep in the movie because I thought it was a movie that it was just about a guy that died playing on a swing set in the rain. And so I think I missed a lot. I think I may have missed the second half of the movie largely on purpose to escape the movie, because what happens in this movie that you've already stated is it starts with telling us he's going to die of stomach cancer, and you think you might have or that he has a stomach cancer. It doesn't tell you he's going to die. And maybe it does, maybe it does. And then it lets you kind of worry for a minute, like, about where's this movie going to go? Is it just really about a guy who's going to die from stomach cancer? And then he goes to the doctor's office and the guy says, hey, this is what's going to happen if you have stomach cancer, blah, blah, blah. And then he goes and the doctor says all that. But there's still some leeway where you're like, I don't know if he's going to have this stomach cancer and die from it at the end of the movie or what. But then, as soon as he leaves the doctor's office, we stay with the doctors and the nurses, and they gossip amongst themselves that he only has like 6 months to live.
Yes.
So what happens now is we have a film that's over 2.5 hours long, where we know the ending, and we know it's depressing from the start. And I just felt like this movie would never end. And I also felt like that 20 years later watching it again, even though there are many, many things to admire about this movie. Like you said, it's old-fashioned filmmaking. To me, it's bravura. There are so many awesome things in this movie. We talked about the colorlessness and sort of the drabness of most of Mark Forster's Man Called Otto. This is a movie where every shot and every scene is filled with cool details and life.
Yes.
We see so much of Tokyo. There are cool montages, like when we see him at work and we see the way we find out that he's not part of all these other departments is that we follow this group of
neighborhood moms
that want to get a playground cleaned up that's a cesspool.
It's not a playground yet.
No, it's some area that's getting people sick in their neighborhood.
Yeah, there's a culvert right next to their neighborhood that is basically an open cesspool. It's sewage. There's sewage there. People are getting sick. And what they want is to have it cleaned up and turned into a nice neighborhood park. And they go, you're right. The first time we see them is when they come to the public affairs office and
this
they
takes
refer
us
them
on this whip dash montage of all these different offices, and we get to see all these different bureaucrats, what their office looks like, and each one has slightly different or very different details depending. Some of them are more so, and we can make all these associations and judgments, being like, oh, this guy's got a different kind of thing, oh, this guy's kind of like that,
Yep.
and blah blah blah. Really, at the beginning, and this is before we find out for sure that he's dying, so there was still also some hope that this whole movie would be, I was like, this is pretty cool. And throughout the film we get cool things like this. This is like, Kurosawa is a visual master.
Yes.
And there's also a lot of good editing in this movie and good sound. Like this, to me, the main reason to watch this movie is if you want to see some cool stuff. We talked briefly about a Tarantino sequence with a clown. This ends up being a Tarantino style movie where, spoiler, the movie goes on like an hour after the character dies.
Yes.
And turns into a different kind of movie, like a Pulp Fiction kind of thing.
Yeah, we will definitely get there.
Yeah.
Because we have to. You mentioned all of the details, which are true. But the colorlessness of A Man Called Otto, this
movie has more color, and it's in black and white.
It does. I felt like I was actually seeing color, and this is the first black and white movie we've talked about.
No, Maniac was black and white.
Oh, that's right, Maniac. Okay, so this is the first good black and white movie we've talked about. That's not fair. Poor Maniac.
It's not a good movie.
No, it's not. But still,
Very bad.
It was what it was, and it couldn't have been better. We can't trample on it too much.
I enjoyed watching it with the riff tracks for sure.
Yeah, but
more than I enjoyed Ikiru.
But you're right. I feel like I saw
It's a visual
more
delight.
color. I feel like I saw more color in black and white 50s Tokyo than I did in 2020's Tom Hanks Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Which is kind of depressing in and of itself.
And I've been to Pittsburgh. It seems nice.
Yeah. Whereas Philadelphia,
I want to go to Philadelphia. I've never been.
Philadelphia is not as bad as I'm making it sound. But I'm just pulling from David Lynch, who always he said Philadelphia was his inspiration, that he loved that city, that it was so depressing and industrial. And I'm like, okay, well, that's, some people would just be depressed. You turned that into a career. You parlayed that into a racer head, and good for you, sir. After the scene at the doctor, after Watanabe learns that he really does have stomach cancer, and again, some great acting from Takashi Shimura in that scene. It was just pleading. He knows what the truth is. He's begging the doctor to tell him the truth, and the doctor just will not.
Yeah, there's a damning thing about doctors here, at least Japanese doctors of the 50s. It's a pretty sad statement about the medical profession that they openly lie to the patients about their condition.
Yeah, but it's not the doctors. It's not just the doctors, I should say. It's the bureaucracy. And that's what you were referring to earlier. Yeah, what you're seeing is the medical example of what we've already seen, as these poor women are getting shunted from one office to another along the chain. I didn't know there were so many offices in 50s Tokyo government that dealt with sanitation matters, but there were at least 3 that I remember. After Watanabe finds out he has stomach cancer, the first thing he does is to go home. And he's clearly, in the aftermath of this, he wants to connect with his son, who lives with him. His son Mitsuo, who is married, he and his wife live in the upstairs of Watanabe's house, which is a traditional 2-story, older Japanese
in fact,
style
she
house.
wants money to get a modern Western style house.
Yeah, and they talk about that. We actually don't know that he's gone home to basically try to reconnect with his son. At first, we follow them as they come in, and they're actually talking about him. And this is another thing that the film does. They view Watanabe, his son and his daughter-in-law, he is a wallet. He is a wallet that they do not yet have the capacity to open, although they very much want to. What he's worth to them is his retirement bonus plus his pension. And they are talking about borrowing against his retirement bonus to buy themselves, a Western-style home. It's literally, we're talking like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that they want to borrow. But they get upstairs, they're talking about him in just the most openly grotesque monetary terms, and they turn on the lights, and there he is, in their room, clearly distraught. They kick him downstairs because it's their space, and then talk about how he shouldn't be upstairs because even though it's his house, it's their room. Thanks, son.
Yeah.
Maybe Otto actually got lucky.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're expecting loved ones to make him live again in this movie, this is not that movie.
No, this is not that movie, which is one of the ways in which it, in my mind, very pleasingly contrasts with A Man Called Otto. Because all of the easy answers that movie reaches for, this movie tells you, no, that's not actually going to happen. We're very sorry. Again, much like we see a series of flashbacks as he goes downstairs. We see him in a hearse with his brother and his sister-in-law and his son on his way to his wife's funeral. His son is very young, and there's that poignant line of dialogue as the hearse pulls ahead of their car and speeds around the corner, and the kid says, "Mommy's getting away." That's one of those, like, stab you in the gut lines. At least it is for me.
We get the son playing baseball.
Yeah, we get the son playing
Could have done
baseball.
with a lot more of that.
Yeah, and he
Seems
clearly...
like he's pretty good.
He does seem like he's pretty good. He gets a hit, and then he gets thrown out trying to steal second.
But it's a big crowd. Like,
Yeah.
It's like he's clearly playing for some kind of decent team. Mm-hmm. Unless Japan is just that baseball crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know...
Like, it looked like they were at, like, a real stadium.
Yeah, because that's clearly, though, I wonder if that's kind of an ahistorical thing, because from my understanding, baseball didn't really get big in Japan until after World War II.
I don't know. It's big enough in 1952 that there's a scene in a Japanese movie where they're in like a crowded stadium he's watching his son play baseball.
Yeah, but that's my point. It really took off in Japan after the American occupation, post World War II. So I wonder if this is like inserting something to please the Americans,
or I don't know,
who are still there at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I think so. I think that it's just Japan went baseball crazy.
Yeah, but this has got to be like his son is a teenager. This has got to be, and this is before his son goes off to war.
Yeah.
Which we also get that scene.
Yeah.
In a flashback. But these flashbacks, unlike the flashbacks in A Man Called Otto, I would say we get them, all of these flashbacks all in a row, and they all tell a very consistent and coherent story without beating you over the head with it. And the story is, this is a man who is being torn away from his son. Not entirely his fault. Not entirely his son's fault. Some things just happen. But he doesn't heed his brother's advice to get remarried. He doesn't have a wife. He decides to live for his son. And then he finds out that, as a single parent who's a bureaucrat is trying to make his career, he can't stay at the hospital for his son's operation. He's like, I gotta go back to work. He wants so desperately to express pride in his son, but then the other spectator, when his son gets thrown out, says, what a stupid idiot. And he just kind of sits back down. It's like, and then he literally watches his son on the train in uniform, pulling away from him, going to war, and you get the sense that, like, that's it. Like, nothing big happened, nothing dramatic happened between them. If it were A Man Called Otto, there would be like a single defining incident. You bought a Ford, and that is the reason why I never speak to you again for 20 years.
And to be fair to A Man Called Otto, I think one of the reasons that Ikiru feels like, to me, so hard to watch and like a trap that I'm not really enjoying is that Ikiru is such a wilting daisy all of the time. If maybe he was funnier, more interesting, it would be a different movie. It wouldn't be Ikiru.
Yeah.
But I might enjoy watching that lead character more. The performance is great, but you really are watching the people that are playing against the lead character in the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
You're finding out a lot about society around him, where he just shrinks back. It's like, it's also, we already know it's a damning picture of bureaucracy.
Mm-hmm. But it's also a damning picture of family relations, too. And right at the end of all of that scene, like, he literally goes, he's calling out to his son repeatedly, over and over and over and over, and he goes up the stairs to try and talk to his son, just to try to reach him on this terrible day after he's gone through all these memories, and just as he hits the top of the stairs, the lights from the son's room go out, and he's just shrouded in darkness. Again, visual storytelling. A great choice, and you're left with the impression that if you're looking for solace among your family, Watanabe, you're not going to find it.
And what we see throughout the film is that it is a film by a filmmaker, by an artist.
Yes.
Like, we get an artist's point of view, and specifically a movie director, a person who deals with the machines of making films, because first we see his view of doctors and the medical profession. We see his view of bureaucracy. We see his view of money, and later we see even his view of writers.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, we'll get to the writer. But one of the things I love about the movie, and we can touch on this later, I guess, when we talk about the funeral scene at the end, but it's made very clear, even though it's not spelled out, until the end of the movie, until that wake scene. I guess I should have said wake, not funeral. But the bureaucracy of which he is a part has separated itself and segmented itself into so many little parts, so that every, for every single thing that you might approach the government for, there is only one department that can do that thing. But the flip side of that is that department can only do that one thing. It's like they've segmented all the power off so that there's a clear area of responsibility. But so all the little problems, you take it to the right people and they can get handled. But if you've got something that involves like multiple levels of bureaucracy or multiple departments, it will never get taken care of, because there are too many different people guarding their own little fiefdoms. In A Man Called Otto, Otto is he's a stickler for the rules, and he thinks you follow the rules and the rules will set you free. Like, if everybody just sticks to the rules and sticks to the game plan, then everything will work out. Even though the bureaucrats from Dimerica are the villains of the piece, there's still, Otto saves Reuben from going to...
They're unscrupulous pirates.
Yes. Otto saves Reuben from going to a home and from getting kicked out of his home and having his home stolen away from him by relying on an application of bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, that's exactly right. Bureaucracy saves him.
Yes, it's like
the law,
ultimately...
the rules.
Yeah.
He follows the rules and it saves his friend.
Yeah, stick to the rules and the rules will set you free. And Ikiru is here to tell you no.
And the doctors are helpful in
yes.
The Man Called Otto.
Yes, and Ikiru is here to tell you no. The rules are not here to set you free. They're here to safeguard power so that no one is ever completely provably responsible for anything. Everyone protects their own job. Everyone protects their own piece of the pie. You're paying for these people and they don't help you out. Congratulations.
Yes.
This is hell.
We routinely get bureaucrats that think about making a difference in some small way and then decide, wait, that's just going to get me in trouble at work.
Yep. By the way, I have no problem talking about this whole movie because it won't matter.
If you're going to see it, you're going to see it. If you're not at this point.
Yep.
Or you've already seen it.
And all of the power of the movie will still be there. I could literally tell you shot for shot what happens and it wouldn't make a difference to the movie's power because it's still there. So he's reached out to his son and that doesn't help. So his next plan is to go find a quiet neighborhood bar and literally drink himself to death. Because you're not supposed to
contemplate life, where he does, I guess, in the course of trying to drink himself to death and failing because he can't really get himself to drink.
Yep.
But this is his first stab at like doing something outside of himself. It's like, you know what? I've never been a drinker. I'm gonna drink myself to death now because I'm depressed. Mm-hmm. And it just ended this fast. And this also is where he starts to hatch the idea, we find out soon, to change his life in other ways.
Yeah.
But he gets encountered by... Or he actually starts the encounter with another blowhard.
Yes, he does. But before we do that, we are told, basically, to set this up, he goes away from the movie for a few minutes. After the lights go out and after he goes back downstairs, the next day, no one knows where he is. He's not at work. Work sends someone to his home to check up on him. They said, well, he left at the usual time. People are going around trying to figure out where Watanabe is and what's happened to him. And in the process, they find out that he's pulled a substantial amount of money out of his savings, 50,000 yen. Now, I don't know. I can't do a dollars to yen comparison in 1952, and I sure can't tell you what that would be worth today in dollars. But the movie does kind of give you a reference point because they talk about the pension that he can expect as being 13,000 yen a month. So he's basically pulled 4 months' pension out of his life savings, money that he's spent years scrabbling for and saving, and he's going to go blow it drinking. He's just trying to figure, it's like, I gotta do something with this money. I gotta make some grand gesture. And he has no idea what to do. And that's when he runs into a character that the movie never names, it is only credited as the novelist.
Yes.
Who is the novelist?
The novelist is a drinker who writes novels, and he meets him at a bar. There's something he wants, like...
some sort of stomach medication, I think.
Yeah, and his first move of piping up in the movie, Watanabe offers up from the shadows that he has some medicine for him.
Yep.
And this intrigues the writer, the novelist, to come talk to him. Mm-hmm. And the novelist finds out about the stomach cancer and is like, so you're drinking? That's poison, man. Does it even taste good? And he's like, no. And he decides, the novelist impresses him as so full of life. It's this young, thin guy who's very energetic and talks a lot. Watanabe gets the idea that he's been getting busy dying instead of getting busy living his whole life, and this novelist can help him learn how to live with this limited time and help him. He wants to spend all of this money he withdrew in one go.
Yes.
Maybe he's decided not to, instead of giving it to his son who doesn't love him, he's going to just blow all this money and see if this offers him some kind of catharsis or happiness, or maybe hastens his death.
Yeah.
Or all three.
And I do think there is a little latent bitterness toward his son, but also, to be fair to Watanabe, I think part of this is just he's being honest about he has a certificate on his wall. He's shown up to work 30 years straight without even one absence. He's never missed a single day of work in over 30 years. And now he's going to miss. He's denied himself for so long. And what good has it done him? Nothing. He's got stomach cancer. He's going to die. So now he's going to live. He's going to try to figure out what that means. And this fast-talking, natty dresser who seems to know his way around Tokyo, who seems to appreciate a good sake, who's got people like coming up to pick up his scribblings and take them back to the publishing house. Yeah, this guy must know what real life is about. So they go to a pachinko parlor.
The guy's like, okay, he tells Watanabe that, all night he's going to take him on a wild ride of showing him what life's all about, and they're going to kick up their heels, and it's all going to be on him, right?
Yes.
The novelist is going to pick up the tab rather than blowing Watanabe's money, which is unclear in a way. I was still a little confused as to, does he mean everywhere Watanabe's going to not have to pay for anything?
I do, I really do. And that actually, I said earlier that Mitsuo, his son, and his daughter-in-law, they view him as a wallet. This guy, this is a recurring theme through the movie, and again, Kurosawa never spotlights this. You have to find it. This guy views him as material.
Yes.
He's a story. This old man who's done nothing with his life and is now, you can practically see the wheels turning in this guy's head, like, I'm going to write a novel, and it's going to be about me.
Yes.
And this old guy, and I'm going to take him around and show him the best night he's ever had, and he's going to learn what real living is, and I'm going to publish this and make a fortune. And so, yeah, they go to a pachinko parlor, they go to a jazz club, they walk through a red light district where Watanabe loses his hat, and he has to buy a new
is
one.
encouraged, rather than going back in to get his hat, he's like, going back into that parlor is going to cost you 10 hats to get that hat back. He's like, you might as well just buy a new hat for a new man.
Exactly.
And this sequence, frankly, I was already feeling trapped by the movie, so for as much life as in the sequence as far as action and movement, already the movie was an incredible drag because it's just depressing, and the whole night is depressing, but we get a lot of fun lighting and camera moves and a lot of fun songs, a lot of music. We get the jazz club where the guy's playing some piano blues that sounds very American, but it's in Japanese. Them in the cab with those Japanese girls who are singing Rosemary Clooney in Japanese, which was delightful. That come to my house, come to my house.
We get the dancing around and doing that, like the singing in the rain movements with the hands and the we're doing the knee thing where your knees, and you're putting your hands so it looks like your knees are crossing each other, but of course they're not. We're doing that whole thing. Even there, Kurosawa kind of tips his hand as to where this whole sequence is ultimately going to end up. I don't know if you noticed this, but the sequence with the piano player in particular, at one point he shoots the piano player and two of the good time girls in the club through a fringe that looks very much like prison bars.
Yes. I guess you're right that it could illustrate prison bars, and probably does. But to me, this was another case of Kurosawa was going to find an interesting way to frame or give us more visual information in every shot. It was like a Tony Scott movie.
Yeah. And that's and you're right.
Visual intensity constantly. Maybe
I am just building something out of nothing by saying that looks like prison bars to me. But in a movie that was made by, say, a Mark Forster, I wouldn't have that option because that shot wouldn't exist.
Or it would be far more in your face.
Yes, way too much. But it's at this club that I know this must have been your favorite scene of the movie because you've talked about feeling trapped and it being slow. So we're in this filthy piano.
I know where you're going.
Jazz club. It's like, does anyone have any requests for songs? And Watanabe requests a song from his youth. The Japanese name is Gondola no Uta, but the film names it like the English translation, something like Life is Brief.
Yes,
Life is brief, and it's all a song about you should fall in love while you're young, before you get old and before the fire in your heart fades, and enjoy life while you're still capable of doing it. Build something before you can't build it anymore.
And this, the way you're saying it, is how the scene plays out, where he sings it as this earnest dirge, but the piano player strikes it up to not be that way, and you can see how it was probably a popular love song because people come out to dance and they're dancing. But then, yes, Watanabe starts singing. Even though I'm not sure in real life he'd be able to be heard clearly over all this noise. In the movie, he's heard by everyone.
Well, they are kind of off in a corner of the club. Like, it is kind of shut off from everywhere else. So I can believe that the people in the area, and I don't think he means to sing it. You're right, dirge is the perfect word. But I don't think he means to sing it as a dirge. He's just an old man. He's just reminiscing. But everyone in the club stops. The combination of the slower piano and this old man singing softly and reflectively. It's like for a minute, they're kind of touching their own mortality.
Well, he's certainly touching his, and the movie, it's so earnest and stuff, and you're right, it was slow, it was killing me. I wanted the scene to end any second. However, I will say, whereas the movie Man Called Otto multiple times definitely tries to manipulate you into crying, with things being sad or happy, it's really trying to pull your emotions. This movie never once tries to make you cry. Like, this is the kind of scene where it might do that with the dying man singing the song about life is brief in a very dirge manner. But when we see the close-ups of his face, which are as earnest and bleak as anything ever, what it really wants you to think about is life.
Yes.
It's not trying to emotionally manipulate you so much. But either way, it didn't work for me to where I liked it. I was just like, yeah, get this off the screen, buddy.
Oh, that makes me sad to hear because I actually was crying.
Oh, wow. Well, they came by it honest.
It is. It's not trying to manipulate you. It's not. This is the difference between drama and melodrama. Melodrama kind of, it urges you to a certain reaction. It tries to weight the feelings that you're going to have in a particular direction. It's like pushing you toward this.
Yeah.
Do this. Feel this.
Kind of the difference between tragedy and melodrama.
Yeah, and this is just feeling. You're just feeling it.
Yeah, I did not.
Okay, well I did, but that's okay. And this whole sequence of him going out with the novelist to live life ends in what to me is the most horrifying thing I've ever seen in a film that's not explicitly a horror movie. It's him, Watanabe, dead drunk, on his feet, dancing with some strange girl in the middle, like crowded around with people on all sides in just this packed cattle car of a dance hall. It's like, if there is a hell, if there are multiple hells, I would like to avoid that one, please.
I was probably more horrified by the defecating elephant in Babylon. But I do the movies like
more of a
here's
thing.
supposed to be the great night out, and it's a terrible night out.
Yeah.
It made its point.
It really is.
I just like it was like the 50th scene in a row that ended depressingly.
Yeah.
And so I was very ready for this movie to be over, and every second to watch was a struggle.
I'm sorry.
It does pick up at some point.
It does. But the novelist...
But not yet.
Not yet. The novelist departs. The film...
Yeah, eventually he's had his night.
He's had his night, but the way they depart is like, again... Kurosawa is a good filmmaker. Watanabe leaves the taxi that they're in to go throw up. Mm-hmm. At least I think that's what he's doing. He comes back and he looks up at the cab. And it's like his whole face is in shadow, and then he looks up and like half of his face is in light. He's looking, he's got this grimace on his face. And then the shot cuts to the novelist, and you can feel like he's feeling, I've touched something. This is not good. The thing that I've done...
No, you're right. The moment where the novelist leaves in the cab is really good.
Yeah.
That's a really good moment in the movie.
Yeah. It
felt really real.
Yeah, the thing that
you're like, that's what this guy would do.
Yeah, this is not good. I need to leave now. The next act, he's tried to go out living and blow all of his money in one go, or some of his money at least, and that didn't work. So he happens
left
to...
him feeling more empty than ever.
Yes, and he happens to be walking down the street kind of aimlessly. I'm guessing this is the morning after. And he runs into a young woman who works for him at Public Affairs on the street. And she, again, everyone in this movie kind of uses everyone else to fit a role. But for her, his role is just like, he's the boss.
And we've seen that in The Office, one of the things that on the day he went to his doctor's appointment, she was kind of the bad girl in class that had a joke that he needed to be shared with everyone.
Yes.
And it was a joke about a guy who thinks that the bureaucracy can't work without him, but is secretly afraid that no one will miss him if he's gone. Mm-hmm. And then she at some point when Watanabe is not on screen has been missing work, when the people are noticing him missing work at the office, which this is another thing in the movie that he repeatedly becomes a source of gossip.
Yes.
And around the same time as when the son and the son's wife, they start arguing about upsetting him, and they know that he's been missing work. They're kind of arguing about how they talked to him and how he overheard them. And they go see his brother. Mm-hmm. So I guess he had multiple brothers.
No, it's the same brother.
Oh, okay.
It's the same brother from the beginning. Just brother, obviously much older.
His brother assumes that he has a young woman, and that's where he's going with all his time. And you really, basically what you find out is how the people at work deal with life, and how his brother looks at life as like an amorous rogue, kind of a lech, and the brother's wife busts him on it, saying, you just think that everybody acts like that because that's how you think. But at work, what you see is that this girl in the office, this woman, she has decided to quit because she feels like she doesn't belong in this bureaucratic place. She has life in her. She's an alive person.
I've put a year and a half in, and I'm done. I'm going off to do something else.
But she can't quit because it needs a stamp.
His stamp, specifically, most of the business in the office can be conducted without him, as it turns out.
The guy says that
one of his subordinates can do most of the stuff.
Yeah, but not deliver his stamp.
No, resignations, like personnel changes, that stuff needs his approval specifically.
And so, by coincidence, they bump into each other on a Tokyo street.
Yep, runs into her. She says, oh, I've been trying to find you. I really need you. I'm trying to quit my job. I need you to help me do that. And he says, come on back to my house and we'll do that. And again, of all the people in the movie who see him for his value to them, hers is the most innocent. And it's not close because what she wants from him is that stamp. And once she's got it, she doesn't need anything else from him. But then they actually start to, he notices as she's in his house, he looks at her as she's walking around and he sees she's got holes in her stockings, in the heels of her stockings. And being a nice guy, kind of a charitable impulse, I'm sure, probably not thinking about how it might look to other people.
No, and I think that he's already starting to develop some appreciation of her liveliness.
Yes.
And the fact that she wants out of this job, that he's just felt like, as we'll get to the more direct reference, entombed him for his entire life.
Yes, I agree with that.
He's already got this, his wheels are turning, that he wants to do something for this person. This person is what he envies.
Yes.
Or he's fascinated by her.
Yes, because she has something he doesn't. And he desperately, that's the thing he thinks he wants, and he desperately wants to know how to get it. So he takes her and he buys her some stockings.
And which she, of course, starts to suspect is this guy trying to perv on me.
I don't think she thinks that at first.
She doesn't, but then when he says he noticed, she thinks at first that he's buying them for someone else.
Yes.
And then they leave the store and they're hers, and she's just really happy to have them, and she's like, wait, why did you get these for me?
Yes, and then, but then they go around and they have an entirely more innocent version of his night with the novelist, because it's all happening in the day. They go play pachinko again, they go to a movie together, they have a snack, they have some dinner later on. My favorite part in this whole sequence is when they go ice skating. I'd actually forgotten about this, except when I was rewatching this for this episode. Notice that everyone else is gliding along and he is not. He is literally stomping on the ice. Yeah. He's trying to walk in his ice skates instead of gliding his clump, 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 which of course brings them both down to the ice, because naturally it would. But at some point, everyone starts to suspect. He spent this whole day with her. His son clearly now thinks.
When they were at the house getting the stamp, or maybe at the end of the day, before she goes home, at one of these points, the son and his wife come home to maybe apologize to him, make up to him, to try to get back in his graces to get this money from him. And they overhear this girl, and they think the uncle is right, that the dad does have this young lover and in their house.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, the uncomfortable scene where he has to come home to talk with his son, who again views him as a wallet, saying, Dad, I know it's your money, but I have rights too. We have rights too. You can't just go blow all of this. We need to sit down and establish what your boundaries are for what you're going to spend on your floozy. He does not use the word floozy. He doesn't come close. It's very delicate, but that's clearly the implication. And Watanabe is a little offended, as who wouldn't be? So he goes back to talk to this girl, only to find out she's starting to think the same way about this whole situation.
As she might.
Yeah. Why are you hanging around me, old man? You know, here I am. She's in her 20s, she must be. Here's the 60-year-old man who's buying her stuff. And yeah, if you look at it from the wrong angle, it looks kind of creepy.
And then he hasn't given anybody a normal way to look at it.
No, because, again...
or a sane way.
He is just not that kind of guy. It wouldn't even occur to him. At least I don't think.
He finally, when pressed though by her,
yes.
when she she refuses to hang out with him anymore. She calls him creepy. And she literally says he's creeping her out. Oh, we also find out what she's going to do instead. She's gotten a new job, working in a toy factory where she makes these wind-up bouncing rabbits that she displays, and it bounces across their lunch table. And that she loves this job, making things that touch children.
Yes.
The filmmaker, the artist who makes all of these movies for the people to touch them. Mm-hmm. This is the artist's point of view, that making something for these people makes her really happy. She feels like she's touching every baby in Tokyo.
Yes. Yep. And that's actually, she doesn't want to go out with him anymore. He talks her, we find out about this toy because he talks her into one last dinner. He clearly realizes she's done with him. So
and I think, does he talk her into it by telling her the truth, or does he tell her the truth at dinner?
He tells her the truth at dinner.
Okay.
He basically begs her one last dinner.
And she says no, but then seeing him so defeated and crushed,
she feels bad.
Yeah, and she acquiesces. Mm-hmm. It's like, one last time I'll hang out with you and never again.
And that's it. So yeah, so at this dinner, he basically throws everything. He's like, I want to know what your secret is. I have wasted my life. I want to live. I don't have much time left and I want to live. How do you do what you do? And at first she can't come up with anything. She's like, I work, I sleep. You do the same things. But the wind up...
I eat food and I go to bed and I work and I eat.
Yeah, that's it. But the wind up rabbit is her ultimate answer. By making these, she feels like she's making a positive difference in the world. In a less great film, he would immediately proceed to the idea that he ultimately hits on.
I want to interject that I said the movie at some point picks up. This part with her is where it picked up. Yeah. And it's interesting because I found it incredibly corny. But at the same time, we don't know exactly where it's going to go in this part. It's not just all a foregone conclusion of where this sequence with this woman is going to go. We know no good can come of him partying with that writer. It's just like, we kind of see that it's going to be an empty, gross situation from the start. Mm-hmm. As soon as we see the pachinko, really, we were like, oh, nothing is going to really come out of this. But then when he's with the girl, we're like, oh, there's some intrigue here. You know, we got the people gossiping about what's really going on. Is he going to, get anything out of this in the end as far as life lessons and what's going to happen here? So the movie did actually get better here for me. Yeah. I stopped feeling as trapped. The minutes stopped crawling by of this movie. Which is such a shame because you're seeing so much throughout the movie. This is not like a slow movie about a man in a room.
No.
This is a movie that goes around, is big budget. It's an epic in a way.
It is. It's an intimate epic.
Absolutely.
It's the epic of one man's last days.
Yes.
But this is again, if this were not as good a film, she would say, I make wind-up rabbits because that, I think that I'm making kids' lives better and that gives me purpose. And he would immediately hit on the idea, which again, we're going to get to it. Oh, well, now I know what will give my life purpose. I'll go to it. And Kurosawa does not do that. Instead, this is the moment, you say this is the moment where the film really picked up for you. This is the moment where it kind of shut down for a second for me because he thinks, I want to do what you do, but I work in an office that's designed to make nothing happen. How can I do that?
Well, the movie is asked a question at this point.
Yes.
Here we have an actual conflict drama between two people in a scene, much like earlier with the women at the office where you're like, well, what's going to happen with this? Here, the movie genuinely becomes a drama where we're like, well, what is her answer going to be? Mm-hmm. What's going to happen between these two characters? So this has got to end somehow. What's going to happen? So it starts your brain in getting involved in the drama.
It does, but at this moment, the movie actually shuts itself down just for a few seconds. where he's, basically he thinks there is nothing I can do like anything like you do. Young woman, I think her name is Odagiri. There's nothing I can do. That's her last name. I don't know what her first name is. There's nothing I can do like what you do. So, and then he says the words that if you really have been falling in love with this guy, it's like a dagger to the heart. He pronounces his own obituary. He says, it's too late. And then the movie just lets you sit with that for about 5 seconds, cutting back and forth between the two characters. And you're like, oh no, maybe it actually is too late. Maybe there's nothing. Then he thinks of something.
And this,
Yep.
firstly, is not... The movie kind of dies again in a way. It never dies again to me at the extent of, like, being as painful to watch as the first. We're probably about an hour into the movie at this point.
More than that.
Maybe that. Yeah, we're probably halfway.
Hour and a half.
Okay, so we're, like, maybe slightly over halfway into the movie, and it's been a painful experience. And I'm thinking I fell asleep before this point the first time I saw the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just remember the whole thing as being a painful experience. And I'll be honest, I wasn't as invested in the end part of the movie as I would like to be in a movie ideally, but it did move for me. It kept moving, and it wasn't as hard to watch as the first part. However, a great thing about the movie is how long it's been between the setup of the idea he gets and it coming back into the story, because you did not see it coming, or at least I didn't see it coming.
No, because you've been focused so much on his problems, like he would be. It's his story.
It was a genuine surprise and set up well to where you were like, oh, this is much like in a good drama, both surprising and inevitable.
Yes, and as he's leaving with his idea to put it into action, all this time while they've been having dinner in this restaurant, they're having dinner in a booth that's sitting on one side of the restaurant. There's actually a staircase coming up from the ground in between the side of the restaurant that they're on and the other side. And on the other side, in the background, this whole time, you've been seeing a bunch of teenage girls setting up for a party. And there's a cake, they're all gathered there, they're clearly waiting for somebody. And as he leaves, the girl whose party it is arrives and comes up the staircase, and the girls start singing Happy Birthday in English. They're clearly, of course, singing to their friend. It's a birthday party, but he's on his way, he's on a mission. It's like they're also singing to him Happy Birthday, and I'm not going to do more because that's copyright. He gets back to the office for the first time in a long time. Everyone's surprised to see him, and he shows up, and he is a man possessed. He takes the petition that the women brought around to get that culvert, that open sewage culvert in their neighborhood, turned into a playground. And he's like, I'm going to make this happen. This one thing, I'm going to make this one positive contribution to the world before I die. I'm going to push this through the bureaucracy. I'm going to get with sanitation, and we're going to clean that area up, and I'm going to get with public works, and we're going to make them get all the permits through, and I'm going to get with the parks department, and they're going to design and build something that's really nice. We're going to make this happen. And no one believes he can do it. His own staff's like, this is impossible. And he says, nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it. And then he walks off. He's on his mission. In a more normally structured movie, this would be the part where you watch him carry his plan out into action. And that's when we cut to his wake.
No, the narrator comes back and tells you he's been dead for 5 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, he is now dead. And what we're seeing is a wake with his close family, his son, his daughter-in-law, his brother, and some members of, pretty much all the members of his department, and some people from other departments. The deputy mayor is there, and you're settling in thinking, okay, well, what's going to happen now?
We've still got about 50 minutes of the movie. Close to an hour of the movie is probably left.
Yes, we have at this point, the wake itself gets interrupted by journalists who are showing up to ask after this minor bureaucrat who died, because the journalists are saying, everyone is saying this guy built the park. This guy built that park, and the deputy mayor goes, well, it was a team effort. We all did it. It's really rude to put all this credit on one man. But you learn a couple things in that conversation. The movie is telling you how it's going to end. Number one, he will succeed. Mm-hmm. He will actually build this park. Number two, this is the first time in the movie you find out he died there. That's where his body was found.
In the park.
In the park, on the swings.
In the snow.
In the snow. And there he is. And
the feeling is that he froze to death.
And everyone is thinking, the journalists are like, this is an act of protest about not getting the credit. And the deputy mayor is like, no, that's not true. Which, of course, it isn't. But you can understand why the journalists would think that. And then we go back inside, and the deputy mayor starts leading the effort to strip the credit from the man whose wake they're at and pass it around. He's like, well, we couldn't have done this without you. Well, we couldn't have done this without you. It's, everyone says he did it.
Which makes them in turn, see, the deputy mayor is a savvy man, because what happens is, as he starts spreading out this credit to these other bureaucrats, of course, they're like, yes, but you, deputy mayor.
You're the leader here. We could not have done everything without your wise... At which point, he just humbly accepts the credit back. Because, of course he does, this slime ball. And then the women of the neighborhood show up for not the last time in the movie, but this is their last chronological appearance, to mourn the man whom they credit with giving their neighborhood a playground for their children to play. And they come in, they light incense for him, and they start weeping, and no one can say a word. It's like all of the lies that have just been bouncing around the room are completely refuted by the honest, heartfelt weeping of these women who are just here to say thanks. I love it. So after this happens, the women leave, and his colleagues...
It essentially turns into a two-pronged thing wherein it becomes like Citizen Kane.
Yes.
Where people try to figure out what motivated him to get this park made and what drove him, and they debate at his wake his death.
Yeah.
Because somebody reveals that they found out he had stomach cancer, and so people wonder, did he know he's had stomach cancer? And all of these people have opinions, and through this we are taken on a long slow montage, flashing back and forth between his wake, where people debate things about his life, and seeing him get the park built.
Yes.
And his struggles to do so.
Yeah, and if you're with the movie, you're going to make the transition. The transition to the wake is jarring, admittedly, but if you're with the movie, you're going to follow this through. And again, this is a great illustration of the problems with bureaucracy that Kurosawa is. Every one of the guys in this room has a little piece of information.
And I would argue that as we go along, a weakness of the film is how much this third act kind of part of this hinges upon wondering how the bureaucracy will turn out when the whole movie has already given you its view on bureaucracy, so you know how this story will turn out with these guys. However, there are delights to be had, like we get that his son never understood him.
No.
The son thinks that maybe it was the girl or something, and the people that chime up and their things, some people are closer to the truth than others, but...
Only at the end of the movie does his son even begin to contemplate the possibility, and he's still not there. You're right, he's still not there the last time we see him. He is just starting to realize, I may have been wrong.
Yes, that was pretty good.
Which is great. But gradually, these people, these men who are together, coming together in a way that they ordinarily wouldn't, because they work in different departments, and they all have their own little places in the government that they guard their little fiefdoms very carefully. So normally they wouldn't be sharing information. But now they're here, they're sharing information because they're genuinely curious, and they finally figure out, Yes, he knew he had stomach cancer. Yes, he really was the person who was responsible for pushing all of this through. Yes, he really should be getting the credit that everyone is denying him, except, of course, for these women. And I am going to disagree with you on it does drag a bit, that's true, but it's worth it for the double payoff of their reactions once they have finally figured everything out. The first part of that reaction is now that they have had way too much sake and they are 5 sheets to the wind. They all gather around and say, he was a great man. I want to be like him. We've got to carry his example forward. I'm going to do my best from now on. We all got to be there with courage for each other. You know, it's like, and again, in a lesser movie, that is the moment that would be the climax. It's like Watanabe is now serving as the example for these men who will go forth and make the government work the way it was always supposed to work and throw their careers away if they have to, just to serve the people. And then the other shoe drops when everybody gets back to work and only one person actually meant it.
But then he's shut down.
He shut down hard.
And not shut down verbally, he just turns into a wilting daisy.
Yeah, he shuts himself down.
He shuts himself down. However, you think that's great. I think the movie has already told you from the first scene that that's what would happen if this happened. So I think the movie's better ending would be all the guys saying, yeah, that's great, we're all going to change, and then just a title card telling you nothing changed. Those 2 words, the next day, nothing changed. Or just the words, nothing changed.
I can understand.
And that's the end. That way you don't have to sit through 10 more minutes or 5 more minutes of movie.
But for the comic aspect, I would agree with you. I get that. But as you say, while they've been piecing this together, we see Watanabe's slow journey through the bureaucracy as he's basically trying to make things move. Not forcibly either. He simply said, won't you do this? He's begging. He's begging everyone. He's begging the mayor. He's begging people who are lower in rank than he is, which is humiliating. He's literally like, you have the power to do this thing. It needs to be done. And he brings in the mothers to talk to the deputy mayor. He faces down the Yakuza at one
Yes, yeah.
point.
That was pretty cool where like all of a sudden like he's run afoul of mobsters who want the money, yeah.
Yeah, they want to turn the area, they want to turn that little culvert into a small red light
That's
district.
right. They want a red light district. And we've already seen his experience one night in a red light district.
And I love the head guy when he comes out of the office is like, you know, look, no hard feelings, man. We get what you're doing. Just stop.
Yeah.
And don't you value your life? And again, Takashi
He's got
Shibura.
nothing to lose.
No, again, but
He does value his life, and that's why he's doing it.
Exactly, and a lesser movie would say either of those 2 things, like, I have nothing left to lose, or, yes I do, that's why I'm doing this. No, he just slowly looks up at the guy.
And we know.
Everything you need, any line of dialogue diminishes the expression.
Yeah,
on his
the actual
face.
part of them, like, debating at the wake, intercut with him getting the job done, is pretty good.
Yeah.
I just think the movie goes on a few minutes too long with a foregone conclusion.
But it's not, though. And this is...
I was like, man, no, they're just going to not change their ways.
I agree with you about the bureaucracy.
We don't live in a different world.
I agree with you about the bureaucracy. You're right about that. But I think the movie ends when it has to because, number one, we get to see his death scene.
Oh, yeah. They could have cut to that, I guess.
We get to see his death scene. And again, like I've been saying several times now, everyone else in the movie except him is defined effectively by what they want him to be. They are trying to put him in a particular role. And these men very briefly try to put him in the role of the example we all have to follow. But of course they won't live up to that because the whole system is designed for them not to. What that death scene in the park says to me is, at the end, it doesn't matter. He did this thing. Otto, to go back to the first movie we were talking about, kind of saves the neighborhood by forming a community, and when he passes, people will remember him. But when we watch Watanabe dying, sitting on the swing in the snowfall in the park, that
Which
he is responsible
turns out was
for.
not rain, as I thought the time I slept through the movie. It was snow.
It was snow, and he's sitting on the swing in the park that he helped build, and he's singing that song again, only this time it's coming through triumphantly. It's, it's his statement of victory. And we don't end with the bureaucrats trying and failing to live up to his example. What we end with is the park. That bureaucrat, and he is, I don't know if you noticed this, because he's clearly kind of a junior guy. He has a desk that's farther away from the section chief's desk when he's in public affairs, and he's also sitting further away from the shrine at the wake, like he's basically right at the end of the line. He is the guy who is the first one to say, Watanabe did this. And it's a point he continues to push despite the fact that people argue with him until everybody comes around to that idea, and then they shut him down. So it's kind of fitting he's the last guy we see as he is walking on this pedestrian and traffic bridge overlooking this park that Watanabe built. And that moment...
There's a little hope.
Yeah, there's a little hope, but it's also, it's not even about the hope. It's about he made a difference. He did a thing that actually has value. It's like with the young woman who was working for him. All of the kids who were playing with those like wind-up bouncy rabbits, they're not going to know who made those. They're not going to care. But she will have done her little part to bring some joy into some children's lives. And now so will he. There are going to be hundreds of kids who play in that park. There are going to be dozens of families, hundreds of families maybe over the years, whose lives are going to be made a little bit better. Because
Just not having the cesspool.
Yeah, they're not only not having the cesspool, but their kids have a safe place to play. It's a fenced-off area. There's swings and a jungle gym.
Until those Yakuza start bringing in some H.
Well, we're going to leave that alone.
Give some horse.
But it ends with the ultimate
skag.
statement. It's, you can try and make this man whatever you want him to be, but this is the thing he did, and it's going to live on past him, and it's going to make at least one tiny little neighborhood of Tokyo is going to be a better place because he lived and did something. A Man Called Otto is about finding community in other people so that when you're gone, they kind of feel your absence. Ikiru is about a man affecting a community in such a way that decades after he's dead, there will be people who benefit from what he's done, who will never know his name, who will never care about it, but their lives will be a little bit better because of something he did. And so he did live a worthwhile life. He did something of value that helped other people. There's no question in my mind which one is the better movie for that reason.
I wanted to ask a question. There's a part of the movie we talked about the part of the movie, but we didn't go into detail about when he's hanging out with the girl and she talks to him when they're at eating dinner, that she has nicknames for all the people in the office.
Yeah.
And she goes through and tells the nickname, and either he has to guess who in the office has the nickname, or if she names a person, he has to guess the nickname, which of course culminates in, we know where this one's going, what's my nickname?
Yeah, do you have a nickname for me? You gotta have a nickname
Turns
for me.
out that it's the Mummy. But that one thing the movie doesn't do for a movie is so much cutting back and forth in montage. In this sequence, when she's telling the nicknames and they're guessing them, we don't see who they apply to. Mm-hmm. We don't see them photographically.
No.
But at the end, when they're debating in the restaurant or at the wake.
At the wake, yeah.
Yeah. Do you think we're supposed to make assumptions about which person was which?
I think so, and I think I have a couple of good ideas.
See, I was not swift enough I wanted to. I was like, wait, is this guy? Is this guy? And I couldn't figure it out very well. I was like, oh man, these bureaucrats are too faceless.
Yeah, I think you are supposed to.
Yeah, I just wasn't smart enough to do it.
Well, no, and again, this is one of the things that makes the difference between a good movie and a great movie.
Because I kind of felt like you were supposed to, and I was trying, and I failed.
Yeah, a great movie is something that you can go back and rewatch even after you know the ending because you want to pick up on those little things. And it can reward little explorations like that. So, yeah, I mean, obviously for me, Ikiru is a big thumbs up. For you, I don't think so much.
I think it may be a very similar review to A Man Called Otto, though they're very different movies. But I know why you picked it as a double feature because of the themes that overlap and the differences in tone and ideas, but between two films with such similar themes about life ending and finding meaning in life and an empty person, a dysfunctional person, and they're coming to some kind of understanding or happiness. And I'm going to say no to the double feature just because it's such a downer to watch both these movies together. I think it's a real downer to me. However, as far as which of the two movies I actually preferred, I'm not sure. I found A Man Called Otto much more watchable, like it was shorter and better paced, but Ikiru is much richer.
Yes.
It's just so rich that it really, they're for two incredibly different audiences, even though they're along the same lines as far as story.
Yeah.
But I really can't tell you which one I preferred. I'll probably take more of, I think I agree with themes of Ikiru more. It's more about giving than taking, even though Hanks comes to be loved by being useful. Yeah, I don't know which one. I think maybe I preferred Ikiru in the end as far as if I was to watch one of the two again, it might be Ikiru, but maybe give them both mild thumbs downs in a weird way.
All right.
That's a tough thing to say because Ikiru and you talking about it, it does offer so much, but it's a tough sit for me. It really is. I think the movie could be an hour 40 and get the same things across rather than 2.5 hours. That's what I'll say is like, it's way too long.
Well, Kurosawa does love to do things at length.
Oh, man.
Which, for me, I have no trouble sitting through this movie.
I've seen Kajimusha.
I have no trouble sitting through this movie. I have no trouble sitting through Seven Samurai. Rashomon, on the other hand, is a chore for me.
I think Rashomon's a chore, too.
And he's not even my favorite Japanese filmmaker. Boy, when we get to Ozu, at some point I'm going to suggest an Ozu feature.
I hope you do.
But, my double feature idea, just to make this explicit, and I think this was already kind of implied, was watch A Man Called Otto first, so you have a baseline, and so you get all those good fuzzy feelings and all the melodramatic stuff about, yay, we can all come together and be a real community, and then watch
Here's a movie about how to actually make a community.
Yeah, and then watch Ikiru and get some truth. And get, frankly, a more inspirational ending than the one that A Man Called Otto has. The other movies I was considering, I already mentioned The Intern, which I never mentioned to you at the time.
No, I haven't seen.
It's playing in the same playground, effectively. Excuse the expression, given what we were just talking about. It's an older man who takes a job as an unpaid intern for a startup company run by a young go-getter female CEO. Who's Robert De Niro is the older guy and Anne Hathaway is the young go-getter. And we find out that this old dog might still have some things to offer after all. It's a Nancy Meyers movie. I like Nancy Meyers.
I'm not sure I've ever seen one of her movies.
Have you never seen The Holiday?
No.
Okay. Well, that would be my immediate go-to Nancy Meyers movie, Private Benjamin.
I've seen parts as a kid, but no, I couldn't tell you a single thing that happens in it.
I like her movies, but she's playing very much in that.
Goes through basic training.
Yes. She's not for everybody, but I love her. Anyway, setting that aside. The Intern was a possibility. I did mention Gran Torino and ultimately decided against it because it is basically exactly the same movie as A Man Called Otto, except that it's better.
See, my reminiscence of Gran Torino is that I might prefer A Man Called Otto.
Really?
I felt that Gran Torino had painfully bad dialogue for teenagers. Like, it was like watching a bad Saved by the Bell. And B, well, it also was no more true than A Man Called Otto. I would argue is less true than A Man Called Otto, and what makes a man or what makes life good.
Possibly, but I can't argue with that. But I will say that I would rather have seen A Man Called Otto with Clint Eastwood.
Oh yeah, that would have been something, because Clint Eastwood's also funny when he wants to be.
Yeah, except I already did, and it's called Gran Torino.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'll say about Gran Torino is it's prettier.
Yeah, it is, but that is the basic. It's the same movie. Grumpy old widower falls in love with immigrant neighbor family, helps save neighborhood. I'm oversimplifying, but that's the same plot line, effectively. The other one, and I approached you about this a couple hours after, but I had already basically decided on Ikiru, and then I had one of these last second, ooh, what if I did this? And you might have preferred this double feature. Have you ever seen Seeking a Friend for the End of the World?
No, I can't even remember what it is.
So it's Steve Carell and Keira Knightley.
Not a big Steve Carell man.
I understand, but he's not playing Michael Scott, and he's not playing a traditional goofy. He's actually acting in Seeking a Friend.
I saw Foxcatcher.
He's not
That's
acting
all right.
like that, though.
That could have been worse.
So, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World is not just a movie about the end of one person, it's a movie about the end of the world, as the title kind of makes explicit. There's a comet, it's coming at us, we can't avoid it, and it's about two people who kind of make a connection across generations, Steve Carell, Keira Knightley, and how they spend their last few days on Earth. It would be kind of a depressing pair, maybe even more depressing than Ikiru from that perspective, but it is also a comedy, believe it or not, although I know I didn't just make it sound like one, and is kind of an offbeat double feature that hits on the same themes. That might be to more people's taste. I can tell you this one is to mine, but as an off-the-wall pairing, it might be a good one. So something to consider. So now I've talked for way too long about a classic of Japanese cinema, and you've been very patient. So what's your suggestion?
I also wanted to point out that we also got to hear a little bit, I think, of some of March of the Wooden Soldiers in Ikiru.
Yeah.
In that night when they're out, which is, I wasn't sure if it was set around Christmas or if that's just coincidence or just a pretty piece of music. That is a pretty piece of music.
Yeah.
But now...
I saw the sign in your window advertising a room to let.
I'm looking for a quiet tenant.
This is the riverboat, gambling den, cash cow. Gawain is our inside man.
Damn Skippy.
The general shall be directing our little tumbling operation. Lump is our blunt instrument. Goth Pancake will be doing demolition work.
Just thought I'd leave y'all with some cinnamon cookies. There'll be no more.
Unfortunately, Ms. Munson has complicated the situation.
I know how to decomplicate it. What you doing? I know your mama raised you better.
We must have waffles. We must all have waffles forthwith.
Damn. This is a Christian house, boy. No, you ain't gonna hit me. I'm trying to help you, boy. Better yourself.
So you should, madam, so you should.
We get to talk about my choice, which, as you know, I love to start off by not talking about my choice and talking about what I didn't choose.
Okay, let's do it.
This movie, when I was watching it, it provided a perfect opportunity for either of my two favorite Tom Hanks films. And I almost selected my very favorite Tom Hanks film, which I suspect a far larger portion of any audience will like, which is called The Burbs, which you've never seen, the Joe Dante movie. It came out, I think, right after Big, and it was a hit, but it wasn't nearly as big a hit as Big, and so it's kind of viewed in people's memory, and maybe even at the time, as a disappointment financially.
Sure.
But it's one of those movies that I think just about anybody could just fall in love with. The Burbs. And it's about Tom Hanks plays a guy in a neighborhood who gets some new neighbors whom he doesn't trust. And we meet his various wacky neighbors in this neighborhood in the suburbs.
That sounds a lot like a movie I saw recently. Have you ever heard of A Man Called Otto?
Yes. So I thought it was perfect, and their tones couldn't be more different.
Oh, okay.
And maybe in some future episode, I'll find another reason to suggest The Burbs. Or I would just recommend, if you're a person out there who hasn't seen The Burbs, it's hard for me to think of a man, woman, or child who isn't just going to enjoy the movie. It's a very funny comedy. It's very well made, and it's pretty much fun for the whole family. I saw it first as a child. I probably saw it, the last time I saw it was probably maybe 2 years ago. It's as funny to me at age 40 as it was at age 10.
Well, I regret to say I have never seen The Burbs. I will take your word for that and put it on my watch list.
However, my second favorite Tom Hanks movie is a movie I found even more in common with than A Man Called Otto. One, it's also a remake.
Yes.
Two, it also involves a cat that
Yes.
exhibits some very wacky behavior, and it also involves a black man who can only change his expression, and it also involves someone moving into a new neighborhood. However,
Yes, it does.
this movie is 2004's remake of The Ladykillers from American masters Ethan and Joel Cohen.
Mm-hmm.
And a remake of the what is the studio that used to put all those great movies from England in the day? They made so many good movies. Ealing Studios.
Oh, yeah.
It's an Ealing Studios comedy with Alec Guinness and I think Peter Cushing, and they made so many great films like The Tit-Filled Thunderbolt, and they made wonderful films. But this, I actually enjoy it even more than the original, which I also enjoy. And it's a comedy heist movie.
Yes. Although it takes a long time to reveal that it's a heist movie.
But it also goes through the normal steps of a heist movie.
Yes.
We meet the crew separately, then they assemble, and then they get into the heist. This film resets from England into the state of Mississippi in modern day, in a semi-rural Mississippi edging on a place with a riverboat casino.
Yes.
And it's small town, backwards southern, as we immediately find out. And it's largely, it seems like it's an integrated community, but it's with a lot of black people.
Yes.
In fact, we immediately meet one of my favorite characters in the film, Southern Sheriff, the fat, lazy Southern Sheriff in this town, who's usually a white man in all of these movies. In this movies, it is the incomparable George Wallace, the stand-up comedian, who's one of the people who steals the movie to me.
Yep, Sheriff Weiner.
Yes.
And I admit, I smiled at the beginning. This is...
it's
the first time we introduce the character, we see his campaign poster, and his campaign slogan is, "He's too old to work," and his campaign photo is him fishing.
Yes, which lets you know for the kind of comedy, we're in for all kinds of levels of comedy, from terrible puns to that terrible face change, to some really funny exchanges and some uncomfortable comedy, which you might find offensive or funny, depending on the moment and this particular joke.
Or both, yeah.
Or both. Yeah. Also, the first shot of the movie is a raven. We get another, and our lead character in this film is obsessed with Edgar Allan Poe.
Does he do a Poe recital by any chance?
Yes, this is 3 out of the last, 6 movies where we get a Poe recital.
How does this keep happening?
Wait, so sidetrack about Ikiru.
Yeah, sidetrack about Ikiru, which we just finished talking about. But having watched for our first film the American remake of a Swedish film, and we go back and watch this 1950s Japanese film, which did not actually hit world audiences for almost a decade after it was made. I think because the prevailing feeling is it was just too Japanese, film steeped in Japanese culture, but the themes and the characters are pretty universal as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it
but
could easily be a movie starring Tom Hanks.
It could be. It's one of those movies that I honestly think should never get a remake. So, very briefly, I should mention that it has a remake. An English language remake, no less, called Living, which actually just came out not too long ago. Ikiru, it roughly means in Japanese to live. So, Living is a pretty good translation. And it stars an actor whom I actually think is perfect to play a man who has been a bureaucrat his whole life and is contemplating the meaning of life now, Bill Nighy. I mean, I don't want to see this movie, but I may have to. I may have to put myself...
I considered it.
I may have to put myself through the Man Called Otto experience with Living because, and for roughly the same reason I was okay with seeing a Man Called Otto for this episode, for roughly the same reason. I don't think that the American language or that the English language version would be better than the Swedish version, but if it is, it's got Tom Hanks. So that's a mark in its favor. Right? I feel the same way about Living. I don't think it could be better than the Japanese version. But the casting is great. I may have to see it. Anyway, I had to bring that up.
All right, so back to the Ladykillers. We have this sheriff and he has a deputy, and the deputy is John McConnell. So he has a white deputy who is also fat and very lazy and sleeping on the job.
I was going to bring that up.
And an old widow, Irma P. Hall, as Marva Munson. Mm-hmm. And Irma P. Hall we know from many movies.
Oh, man. She is my favorite character in this, and there's no question about
really?
that. Yes.
She was Jamie Foxx's mom in Collateral. She's in Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. She's been in tons of movies over the years.
Yep.
But my favorite characters we'll get to. She is not my favorite character, though. I do like her in the movie. Mm-hmm. But she has come in to file a noise complaint about a neighborhood kid named Wee Mac, who has got him a sound system that she calls a blaster.
Yep.
And is playing the Tribe Called Quest song Left My Wallet in El Segundo. Though the movie is savvy enough not to really explain that to us. She says he's playing that hippity hop music talking about Left My Wallet in El Segundo. It never tells us it's by Tribe Called Quest. If you're not a person who knows rap, we never hear that song in the movie. You just have to know it. I did, so I enjoyed that note. And she's also complained that it's bothering Othar. And this makes and you kind of get the feeling she's a busybody and a thorn in the side of the sheriff's want to relax and sleep. Mm-hmm. And they pretty much blow her off and tell her they'll talk to Wee Mac, and they send her on her way.
Yes.
And when she gets home, we find out Othar is her dead husband, who is a portrait on her wall. And she has a pet cat named Pickles. Mm-hmm. And she gets a knock on her door, and it's Tom Hanks dressed crazily in an old-timey gray suit, speaking in a very in a Harry Melling-esque accent.
Oh yeah,
very florid, and he's using over-the-top florid language. Her cat gets out, and he wants to rent a room from her.
Yes,
because she has a room for let, and he has to go get the cat when she wants him to climb the tree. He doesn't want to get the cat, but she says that if not, she'll have to call the police to get the cat. And at the mention of the police, he says, no, I'll get it. In my childhood, I was a positive lemur. So he will climb the tree and get the cat, but we immediately realize he doesn't want the police around.
Well, why doesn't he want the police around, this nice, eloquent, articulate gentleman?
Well, before we find out, we meet a variety of other characters in other settings. We meet Marlon Wayans as a new janitorial hire on a riverboat casino, whose boss, Fernand Gudge, is played by Stephen Root, who is not one of my 3 favorite characters in the movie, but he's probably my 4th. And we also meet Wee Mac, who is the older brother from the old sitcom The Smart Guy. And he had a few other things. I think he may have been the singing voice for The Lion King in the original cartoon.
Oh, okay.
And then he's pretty much disappeared. Like, he was a person that in 2004 was more recognizable to me than he is in 2022. Like, when I remember seeing the movie and be like, oh, it's the brother from The Smart Guy. And now in 2022, I'm like, where did I know him from?
Let me pull out my phone and take a look. Yeah.
And so he's showing him around the casino and introducing him to his janitorial duties. And Marlon Wayans is a very street kind of guy with gold chains and stuff. And he curses quite a bit. And we also get introduced to a guard who guards the count room at the casino, who is quite a heavy, even heavier fellow than George Wallace or Irma P. Hall or Stephen Root. We get some Burger King product placement because he has a lot of food on his desk.
Yeah, something is not right with that guy.
Yeah, and he just laughs all the time. We've come to find out that, you know, through his janitorial duties, Marlon Wayans comes into close contact with the count room. Then we cut to, I think, a movie commercial being shot for dog food. And we meet Garth Pancake, prop master for commercials, whose job has been to make this dog in this commercial look like a World War I doughboy who's going to run across a battlefield through bombs and various munitions to get to
his dog food.
To get to a bowl of dog food.
Yep.
And the director is displeased with how Garth has done this because the dog's face is covered by a gas mask, and they want to be able to see the dog's face. And he's like, I told you just to put a cantina around the dog's neck. And like,
that's what makes him a soldier.
Yeah,
not a gas mask. And shout out to the director Greg Grunberg. Lots of J.J. Abrams associations.
Yeah,
there.
Very recognizable character actor.
Although I'm more familiar, I got introduced to him on Heroes. You know, he was the cop. I can't remember what his superpower was, but he was the cop in that mix. And then years after I watched Heroes, for reasons that are too complex and too shameful to relate here, I watched the entire series run of Felicity, where he pops up like he's a main character for several seasons. Recurring, I think, in season 1, and then he becomes a main cast member for the last 3 years of the show. Given what I know about the way Heroes ended, and given my feelings for Felicity, Greg Grunberg does not say quality.
I thought he was quite good in this. He
was quite good in this.
He looks like a guy who directs commercials.
He did. It was perfect casting. It really was.
Yeah, there are a lot of people in this movie who feel like they've just been like waiting around to be put into this role in a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, but there's no one else famous in this scene, right?
Garth Pancake is J.K. Simmons, who is just coming into fame from the Spider-Man movies.
Yes. Where he's J. Jonah Jameson, yep.
And I will tell you, this is my favorite character of the film, is Garth Pancake.
I thought he might be.
Yes, and we get introduced to his catchphrase when they're told to get the gas mask off of him. He's like, sure, easiest thing in the world. And anytime he says that, you know things are not going to be that easy.
Yes.
And they cannot get the gas mask off of this dog, and it proceeds to suffocate to death, resulting in his firing.
Okay, so you tipped your feelings about Ikiru fairly early, and I'm going to do the same right here. And I don't think I'm going to make you happy.
Oh, I had a feel.
I
purposely didn't ask you ahead of time anything you thought about Ladykillers.
This is one of the 3 times I laughed during the movie. Now, to be fair, that sounds really negative, and it kind of is. I smiled quite a few times. I did, but I had 3 actual laughs in the movie. And the dog suffocating in the gas mask was laugh number 1.
Well, the director is, before the dog even starts suffocating, he wants the mask off before the animal rights people see it. Yeah. And he's like, refers to them as assholes or something. And you see the animal rights person distracted somewhere, and him like, be like, don't let the animal rights assholes see this, blah, blah, blah. I thought this scene was delightful.
And what is the dog's name?
I don't remember.
It's Otto.
Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh, he's like, breathe for me, Otto. Breathe for me, Otto.
I really thought that was why you picked this.
No, I had totally forgotten that even now, but you're right. And we also get introduced, I won't say it now, but we get introduced briefly in the background of another major character in the movie in this scene, but we'll get to her later.
Yeah, I think that's better.
And then we go from this to a football game. It seems like a high school football game, but it might be a minor, like a community college football game or a junior college football game. It's
gotta be a college game.
It's gotta be a college game based on the guy's age and size or something.
Yes.
But it's all done, and this is a crazy cool scene to me too, because we see an entire maybe 2 football plays all through first person of a person wearing a football helmet. So we have the mask, and we see 2 plays run from I guess a tight end or a wide out who is terrible and should have never have been put in this position to be in a play, and he gets a pass thrown to him, and the pass bounces off of him, is intercepted by the other team, and run back for a pick six, which is caught all in first-person camera in a pretty cool scene in a movie shot by Roger Deakins, as many Coen Brothers films are.
Yes. It is stylistic. There's no question, and there's nowhere else you can see anything quite like it.
Oh, also to backtrack.
And then the character went to go sit alone on a bench in a park because his name is Lump.
His name is Lump. That's right. He's Lump. He's Lump. And he's kind of a Frankenstein-esque character of dim-witted, tall, muscle-bound, long-headed, short-haired guy named Lump, who we get to see later is played by Ryan Hurst.
Yes.
Who's been on tons of stuff over the years, but never has really gained much traction as a face. You kind of recognize him.
Well, I did know him immediately. I didn't know his name. When I saw him, immediately I was like, that's Gary Bertier. Because that was his character in Remember the Titans.
Oh, which is a movie I've only seen once, as opposed to this movie, which I've seen probably 7 times.
I'm not sure I've ever seen. I probably have seen him in something else, but in Remember the Titans, I mean, he's one of the stars of the movie, and he's the football player who actually gets into a tragic accident and can't play in the fight. He becomes a paraplegic.
Yeah, he is a big part of that movie.
Oh, he's huge in that movie. And it's like, spoilers for Remember the Titans, but if you haven't seen it by now, then what have you been doing with your life? It's his character's death that is actually bringing everybody together at the end of the movie. So we see, we see his life. The whole movie is a flashback from that funeral, effectively, but he makes that movie work more than anyone else who is not Denzel Washington or, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the other coach's name, and this is really embarrassing because I love Remember the Titans,
which is a movie I pretty much blocked out of my head.
Will Patton. Oh my gosh, how could I forget? Denzel Washington and Will Patton are the two coaches. And then
I've never been much of a Will Patton man.
I'm not generally either. I mean, he's okay. He's a great character actor, but he finally gets a starring role and he can actually lean into it and do some stuff instead of just being a good supporting player.
The more recognizable actor to me than Ryan Hurst was the coach of the football team, Blake Clark, who is the unintelligible assistant coach from The Waterboy or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
But he's intelligible in this movie, and he's a perfect Coen Brothers-y face.
Yeah, but Lump is not.
No.
Lump is a lump.
Yes. Then we go to my favorite introduction of the characters, which is that of Z-Ma. Mm-hmm. We go to Hi-Ho Donut Store, which is next to a party supply store in a strip mall, as donut stores invariably are in real life. Mm-hmm. And 2 guys pull up, blaring hip-hop music, dressed like thugs, and they come in to hold up this donut store, which is manned by a middle-aged woman who they call Dragon Lady, and say, "Give us the money, Dragon Lady, or we just want the money." And then she whistles or calls, and out comes a character named the General, who is a middle-aged Vietnamese man with a mustache and an ascot, and they point the gun at him and demand the money, and he proceeds to shove 2 of his fingers up the nostrils of one of these black youths, and then slam the guy's face down on the donuts counter by the nostrils. And I can tell you saw this in the theater. I was howling with laughter. I thought this was the greatest thing I may have ever seen in a movie. I could not believe... You want to talk about the audacity of the end of Babylon. I could not believe that a movie made by 2 Jewish men had the audacity to make a joke about the size of black people's nostrils. I was like, this is some edgy shit right here.
I am laughing at your description of this scene right now. I think it's only fair to say this is not one of the 3 times I laughed during the movie.
I thought this was awesome.
Mostly because I hated those 2 thugs so much.
But they got shown up. They did not win.
Oh no.
The General did. Who was my second favorite character in the movie.
Oh, and I agree with you. I was not laughing because I was just like, oh, thank God. They're getting beat up. Good. Let's move on. Yeah, Zima from
Everything.
such classic films as RoboCop 2
Yes.
and Dante's Peak.
But he's been on just tons of TV
And
shows.
also such failures as Arrival.
Yeah, he was in Arrival.
I love Arrival.
I know you do. Not one of my favorites. I'm much more a Ladykillers man.
I didn't love Arrival when I saw it. I came to love it more over time. I liked it when I saw it though. But yeah, that's what I recognized him from right off was Arrival.
But he's been in like a trillion things over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Like an episode of every TV show. He's one of these character actors who's just been around forever. But anyway, to skip ahead a little bit, I guess, all of these people meet up with Tom Hanks at Irma P. Hall's house.
Yes.
That we've been introduced to. Garth Pancake, who is
the general,
and whatever Marlon Wayans' name is. Lump
Gawain.
is there. Gawain McSam.
Gawain McSam. What a name.
Yeah, this movie has names.
Mm-hmm.
And they've been called there ostensibly because they all play instruments in a Rococo choral music band.
They are. I don't know. He explicitly name checks Renaissance fairs, so I've got it.
Yes.
They're like some sort of medieval performance artist band. I don't know what they're. Medieval troubadours, recreation of a medieval troupe.
Which, if you've seen these characters, you know immediately that's not true.
Mm-mm.
What they're really all there to do is to help Tom Hanks tunnel through Irma P. Hall's basement into the casino count room and then steal millions of dollars from the casino.
Yeah. Now, having lived in Mississippi for 2 years, I did know about the riverboat gambling stuff. That I knew about.
I did too.
I
didn't live there, but I visited once.
Yeah, what I was pleased about, which I did not, is like, I just assumed that all the operations took place on the boat because why wouldn't you, right? You've got enough space. But I did like the setup where the counting room is off the boat, on the shore, underground, connected to the boat by a tunnel that's basically, I suppose, on the underside of the bridge that's connecting.
And we get a fun map scene where we get get a very clear layout of what their plan is going to be. Garth is the munitions man who is in charge of getting them tools to dig and stuff. The general is a master tunneler from French Indochina and conflicts there.
Mm-hmm.
And Marlon Wayans, Gawain McSam is the inside man, and Lump is the muscle.
French Indochina.
Yeah.
If you ever just wanted to hear Tom Hanks monologue for between 30 seconds and 2.5 minutes at a time, never using the same word twice and taking full advantage of every single bit of the Coen Brothers thesaurus. Holy cow, is this the movie for you?
Now, my Coen Brothers lead actors have varied in quality over the years in the movies. And my least favorite, who they've used many times, is George Clooney. I think he's never really too good in the movies they do with him. He's always doing too much. And I felt the same way about Tom Hanks in this movie the first time I saw it. Now that I've seen the movie several times, he has really grown on me. I still don't think he's as good as like even Nicolas Cage in Raising Arizona, or how good Tim Robbins was in Hudsucker Proxy, or surely Jeff Bridges in playing the buffoon character in the Coen Brothers
you can
movie.
just say Jeff Bridges and stop right there. Yeah, I agree with you.
They do this guy who thinks he's smarter than he is buffoon lead in many movies. In fact, they've been complained about, which I think is key in this movie, that they look down on all their characters, and throughout their entire run, they've only done a few characters that they're not looking down on. I think you could look at Frances McDormand in Fargo. You could look at maybe Josh Brolin in Hail Caesar. Maybe some of the characters in No Country for Old Men. But usually, every character in their movies, they are making ridiculous, which is an important note to make with how many black characters are made to look ridiculous and buffoonish in this movie.
That's true.
Just to know that they're equal opportunity on this. This is what they do.
Yeah, I will circle around and say I will defend George Clooney in Hail Caesar.
He is playing, it kind of fits the role.
It works very well in a way that I agree with you, it doesn't quite, and say Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
No. This, to be fair, I love the Ladykillers, and it's one of my favorite Tom Hanks movies. It is not one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies. I wouldn't put it, much as we wouldn't put High Plains Drifter in the top rung of Clint Eastwood movies, Ladykillers is a second or third tier Coen Brothers movie. But to me, they're like Shakespeare. They have given us much.
Okay.
We owe them a great deal if you're a movie lover. Like, I don't think this is as good of a movie as Buster Scruggs. I don't think it's as good as Hail Caesar.
No,
I
and
do
it's
think it's
certainly
better than
nowhere.
Overlord.
It's not even playing in the same league as The Big Lebowski or Fargo.
Yeah, but I do like it more than Oh Brother Where Art Thou. I do like
Yeah, I
it
think
more
that's
than
fair.
Inside Llewyn Davis. I think I like it more than, I definitely like it more than A Simple Man. I like it more than Intolerable Cruelty, which I also think is underrated. I think Intolerable Cruelty has some laughs, but I think this was a more successful film overall to me.
Mm-hmm.
What they do, they're going to get the instruments out and they're going to use a boombox to play tapes of the music they're supposed to be playing while they tunnel. And one thorn in Irma P. Hall's side is the general always smokes, and we get a running gag of him having to hide smoking from her, which I enjoy quite a bit.
By hiding the cigarette in his mouth.
Yes, and then flipping it back out.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. The general is a man of very few words throughout this film. He does not speak until quite late in the movie. Then he speaks a couple of more times, maybe only one more time after that. We find out Irma P. Hall is devoutly religious.
Yes.
And she gives money every month to Bob Jones University.
$5.
She attends church every Sunday. We get to go to their church service and see wonderful gospel performance of Let the Light in the Lighthouse Shine on Me with a very funny, diminutive gospel leader.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a church sermon by a preacher that delivers maybe the shortest sermon I've ever heard in a church. And one thing I want to point out about this movie is how much I like the music in it. This movie mixes classical, it mixes gospel, it mixes folk, and it mixes hip hop, and it always finds a good note of something to like light on that's fun.
Yes, that is absolutely fair.
And one thing the preacher brings up is actually the first thing we saw in the movie after The Raven. The preacher talks about people going after worldly gain, and all the things that worldly gain can buy end up on the garbage island.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a garbage island offshore in addition to the casino. There's also an island of garbage that barges transport garbage from the mainland to and drop off. And we see these things go as a theme of the movie, this garbage island and these barges. We're basically pretty far into the movie at this point. This movie's kind of like a rocket with its plot, in a way. Like
it is, because all of the things that you're talking about, it takes a while for Tom Hanks to really introduce himself and for the other characters to really introduce himself. And one of the things, you said this mirrors the plot of a heist, the general structure of a heist movie, which of course it is. There's one major difference though, and that is that normally in a heist movie, the fact that there is a heist that's going to take place, we know about that before we meet the team.
Oh, you're right. Here we know the team first.
We know the team first, and so the transitions seem a little jarring at that point. The movie's asking you to take it on faith that all of these things are related, because none of these characters ostensibly have anything to do with each other.
Yeah, they're a group of people that have nothing in common.
Yes, which of course is something that Tom Hanks explicitly points out, that
He
they
put
only
an
have
ad
two
in,
things
like,
in common.
A penny pincher style. I forget what the newspaper is called.
The Scimitar, the Memphis Scimitar.
Yeah, they have all answered this ad. That's the only thing they have in common.
Well, two things.
And that they're all going to be extremely rich.
And that's the other thing.
Yes.
Only one of those things is actually true, but we'll get back to that.
Things are proceeding along nicely.
Yeah.
However, two things go awry. First obstacle is that Marlon Wayans gets fired for sexually harassing a woman at the casino by Mr. Gudge. And the other is, well, we find this out. So we see Marlon Wayans get fired and do the sexual harassing. They decide to have a meeting about it and discuss the problem at the Waffle Hut, where they all need waffles to decide what to do about Marlon Wayans. But this is when J.K. Simmons reveals they have a second problem, which is they've hit a rock formation that is very hard to tunnel through. And this is our first line from the general, where he says, very, very bad. Mm-hmm. But then they decide they can blow through that. And the bigger problem is that they need to get Marlon Wayans rehired. However, we also get brought in here that the way they're going to blow through it is we're going to meet who gets J.K. J.K. Simmons his munitions, his girlfriend, Mountain Girl.
Mountain Girl. Which character continually refers to her as Mountain Water? Is that Tom Hanks?
I think it's Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
Yes. So J.K. Simmons has this life partner who is also his partner on the commercial, his assistant, and who is a woman named Mountain Girl, who is tall, wears pigtails, long wool socks, scout shorts. And everyone is taken aback when she shows up because they were supposed to have absolute secrecy, especially Marlon Wayans, who complains that J.K. Simmons has brought his bitch to the Waffle Hut repeatedly.
Over and over.
And this scene
again.
really cracked me up. I was really having a good time. Now, see,
Yeah.
you laughed 3 times at this. The audience of A Man Called Otto laughed many, many times at A Man Called Otto, and you laughed more than me. I went by myself to a theater opening weekend of Ladykillers. I may have been the only person in the audience who laughed at all during the entire movie. And I laughed many times. I was like the anti-Man from Otto me, for I was just constantly cracking up in this movie.
I can understand why, I think.
Yeah, they did not care for this.
No. And it does have a very particular sense of humor. There's no question about it. And part of it is going to be, and it's, I guess, time to say this, I despise Marlon Wayans.
He's not my fave either.
Oh, I hate him so. Look, as a person, I'm sure he's lovely.
There's something anti-charismatic about the Wayanses a lot of the time, and him in particular.
I got over my scary movie phase while I was still in college, and I just can't stand the guy's comedy. And every time, this brings me to the second time I laughed in the movie, and it was easily the biggest, loudest, and longest of them. That is when they're down in the basement. I can't remember if this is before or after the Waffle Hut scene, but it's in that same general area. Down in the basement, he has been fired at this point. They are trying to figure out Mrs. Munson comes down the stairs, trying to be nice, but of course, her going into the basement is interfering with their plans, and Marlon Wayans can't quite make himself live with that. So he starts swearing. And she starts...
What happens is that they've been tunneling.
Yeah.
And this is before he gets fired, actually. They've all come back into the basement as she comes in and checks on them unexpectedly. Because I think this is maybe when she has the group of ladies over for tea and had to leave church early to get home to set up for her group of ladies. Maybe not, but
I think that may be right.
She questions why Lump is so sweaty.
Yes.
And they're all holding their instruments. Then Marlon Wayans says he's one sack butt playing something. Then he just can't shut himself up. He's trying to shoo her out and she's about to leave and they're about to get away with it. He just keeps reiterating how much Lump likes to play the sack butt, and he starts cursing a lot.
Yes, and that's when she starts slapping.
Yeah.
And whenever Marlon Wayans gets slapped, an angel gets its wings.
And he gets slapped many times.
I know, they were mitting him in heaven that day.
Now, earlier, we also find out that one of the running things of the movie is that Garth Pancake, J.K. Simmons, wants to unite with Marlon Wayans because his parents were freedom riders, and he thinks he's so liberal and a friend of the black man. But then when Marlon Wayans, now back in the Waffle Hut, is insulting Mountain Girl, boy, Garth Pancake doesn't care for that, and there starts a rivalry between the two of them that goes throughout the film where they hate each other.
I didn't laugh at this part, but I did smile at it, to be perfectly fair, when J.K. Simmons is talking about how I came down from, I think it was Pennsylvania. I think it was from Pennsylvania.
Oh,
He
wow.
might even have been from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Which would be great. I came
Steal
down
mine, people.
to ride the buses in the South, to get your people the right to vote, to make us
I
equals.
don't vote.
I don't vote is the response. And I smiled at that. I was like, and that is exactly what your sanctimonious crap deserves. The only thing is, I wish it had been delivered by literally any other character. But it could only have been given by Marlon Wayans, whom I just don't like.
You brought your bitch to the Waffle Hut. And then they get into an altercation, and Tom Hanks has to calm them down, saying they bring too much heat at the Waffle Hut. And then he's like, but I do have to agree with him that you shouldn't have brought in this mountain girl. And then finally they decide, okay, she already knows about it, so as long as she only gets money out of your share, J.K. Simmons, I guess we have to deal with Mountain Girl. And so now they're going to blow through the thing, and then they can't come up with a solution with Stephen Root until Lump actually uncharacteristically saves the day with an idea, which is to bribe Stephen Root. So they get Marlon Wayans his job back through a Whitman sampler with $100 and a card in it. It buys him 1 week of like probation. Yeah, so he gets his job back.
Yeah.
And the week is all they need. And really, we don't get much more of the heist, honestly.
No, and that's when I was watching this, I was thinking, I am kind of surprised by this. But in hindsight, it makes sense because, number one, we're not talking like an Ocean's 11. The plan is simple.
Yes, it is a very simple plan.
Yeah, we do not need an acrobat who can fit in a particular place. We don't need someone who's out on the floor playing a character. We don't need masterminds on the tech side of things. We are digging a tunnel from a basement to a casino counting room. We are going to bust into the counting room. We are going to steal all of the money. Then all but one of us are going to leave back through the tunnel. And that guy, apparently Marlon Wayans has super wall repairing skills, will rebuild and replaster the wall from the other side, which is honestly the thing I found most unbelievable.
Oh, yes. And not only that he could do it so quickly, get it to be convincing, but that they would trust this guy to do it.
In a movie with a character whose name is Garth Pancake, the thing I found most ridiculous was that Marlon Wayans could repair a wall.
What we do have, instead of more heist stuff, is stuff of Tom Hanks hanging out with Mrs. Munson by the fire while she knits and he quotes to her Edgar Allan Poe.
It's a good scene.
It is a good scene. And then George Wallace shows back up, and because he's the heat, Tom Hanks makes himself very scarce when the sheriff shows up to just check in on Mrs. Munson and tell her that he did follow up with telling Wee Mac about the ghetto blaster. And she, of course, wants to introduce him to her lodger.
Yes, whom she is very proud of because he is a gentleman. He is a cultured gentleman of distinction, education, and breeding. And oh, so polite.
And this is a good time to point out one of the things I don't like in the movie. Repeatedly, at least 3 times in the film, it makes a pun joke so dumb that I can't believe somebody bothered to write it down. And one is when he says he's a PhD, and she says, "You mean like Elma?" And he's like, "What, ma'am?" And she says, "Fud." So we get some jokes on a really low level at some points in this film. It happens a few times with a line like that where somebody just can't resist saying something really dumb. Mm-hmm. And you wish that they had not gone there, but they do. George Wallace, she makes him follow him around her house trying to find Tom Hanks. And finally, she goes upstairs to maybe the guest bedroom, and he's not in there, but then she sees that his cup of tea is exposed, and he pulls it under the bed, or maybe the cat goes over to it.
No, he pulls it under the bed. She sees it.
But George Wallace does not. And she goes all the way to the bed and gets down on her knees with her hind end kind of raised in the air to lift up the covers and talk to the professor. And she says, "Oh, Professor, what are you doing down there?" Blah, blah. And George Wallace just thinks she's insane, and he's watching this woman's sizable rear end and stuff. And then he just thinks, like, in the same way she refers to her dead husband, Otho, is alive and being bothered by music, that she's seeing ghosts, and he's just dealing with some insane woman. And he's like, "I gotta get out of here," and he leaves, and Tom Hanks's bacon is saved.
One of the things I do really like about the script for this movie, in some other movie, that would be a throwaway joke. The purpose would be to get the sheriff away so you could end the scene, and it would never come back around. As it happens, this little incident that you've just described that gets dramatized to us turns out to be the final straw that ends up deciding the fate of something very important at the end of the movie, based on the judgment that the sheriff has just reached, that this woman has finally eaten the last chewy in her particular Whitman sampler.
Yeah. We have problems with the explosives going off and people hearing it. We have that Tom Hanks has masterfully planned actually to do the actual heist on a Sunday, which I guess is when the count room has not been collected for. It's got all the weekend money. Well, they wouldn't have Sunday nights money.
And double bonus, it's when Mrs. Munson will be at church.
Yes. So they commit the heist. They pretty much get away with it, except that their explosive to close the tunnel doesn't go off. We also get introduced to a problem that Garth Pancake has irritable bowel syndrome, which is how he met Mountain Girl.
Yes.
Who at some point in the movie, a little bit later, Marlon Wayans, Marlon Brando's son, refers to as a 60-year-old Swiss miss, and then J.K. Simmons yells at him replying, "Mountain Girl's 53."
And I did smile at that, but that was not my third laugh either.
This causes a problem and distraction and stuff, or taking time where Marlon Wayans has to take J.K. Simmons to a bathroom and holds it up. But in the end, they commit the heist. They go in, they get the money. Marlon Wayans seals up the wall. Garth Pancake, at some point in the film, loses a finger in an explosion earlier. But here, he almost loses his life because he has to go back into the tunnel and mess with the bomb.
It was when they were exploding that rock. That's when he lost his finger.
After claiming he had all this expertise and that blowing up the rock would be the
easiest thing in the world.
Easiest thing in the world.
Yep.
And now we get to the big problem, which is this is the day the social with all the ladies are. And Mrs. Munson has actually left church early today. This is that point in the movie because they're all dividing up the money in the basement, and she comes home because she hopes that they'll come out and meet the ladies from church when they get there and play them some church music like they're supposed to play. And she walks in on them all dividing the money. And one thing about Mrs. Munson, she may not be overly educated, she may not be the most sophisticated, but she has a sense of right and wrong.
Yes, she does.
And she can immediately sense that no matter what excuses they give her, something's wrong with these guys dividing up all this money. And she's like, we're going to talk about this after this ladies' meeting. You guys come out here and deal with this. They can't play their instruments, of course. And they claim it's because Marlon Wayans is not with them. He's at the casino, and so they can't play with one other piece missing. So Tom Hanks just recites the same Edgar Allan Poe that he recited earlier.
Which you get the sense is all he knows.
He does speak a little bit more of it towards the end, but at the moment, that's definitely, I think, what you think the joke is. Yeah, that's all he knows. Yes, and he blows them all away. The old ladies love it.
Oh yeah. Well, who wouldn't love Tom Hanks reciting poetry? Come on.
Yeah, he moves them all with this poem. He does a pretty good job. Then they have to deal with it, and she says, no, there's something wrong with that money, blah, blah, and he tries to make up excuses. He tries to tell her that one of the best things in the movie is his excuse that the money really belongs to J.K. Simmons, who is now washing dishes from the ladies' luncheon as they're trying to sort this out, and that he is going to refinance, he has put up a mortgage on his house to try to get a surgery to reattach the finger that he lost, and he does not trust the Federal Reserve. He is one of these eccentrics that you hear about, money in a mattress as well.
Yeah. He puts all of his money in a trash bag that's with them always. And J.K. Simmons punctuates the whole thing by saying, yep, I hate banks.
Don't trust the banks, never have.
Yeah, something like, it is... Again, it's well-timed. It's well-timed. Yeah, he tries everything to convince her that this money is legitimate, including saying that he had talked with all of the other guys, and they had each agreed to donate 1/2 of their share.
Well, first, before he has to tell her that,
yeah,
she doesn't believe any of this, so he comes clean about what they did.
Yes.
And he finally says, he's like, no, man, we are not musicians. We are here for a criminal enterprise.
Yep.
We have robbed this thing. He's like, but find a victim. This is a house of sin and iniquity, this casino. We've robbed it. We're all going to give half of our shares to charity. And you can have a share. And it's only going to cost the insurance people who are happy to pay, and it's going to cost each policyholder
one penny. 1 penny, and that's it. And you start to think that she might actually be swayed by this because, you know, she clearly doesn't care much for the Riverboat Casino.
No.
And if it's only 1 penny per person, well, penny's not worth very much. That's basically not really theft, is it? You know, it's not that bad, I suppose. Although it's left up, you know, how honest Tom Hanks is being about that. But whatever, it's fine. You can tell she really is considering all of those arguments. And then her, I don't know if I want to say her training, no, her upbringing kicks in. She's just like, nope, this isn't right. This isn't right. And I won't report you to the police as long as you take all the money back to the casino, every single penny, and you each come with me to church on Sunday morning.
Yeah, next Sunday. She says, you need to return that money by tomorrow and come to church with me next Sunday morning.
Yep.
And he says, a house of worship? And he says, you could tell that it's like Satan tried to step into a church where he gets the idea.
And if he hadn't said that, she might have... Yeah, but that's the thing that solidifies her. He says that.
And she knows she's dealing with evil.
Yep, 100%. She's like, next Sunday. And that's it.
And so he goes back into the basement and tells them their options. This is where the title of the movie comes into play, wherein they decide, we've got about a third of the movie left here.
Yeah.
Which seems to wrap up pretty quickly in this series of actions, but they decide that the only solution is to murder the old woman.
Yes.
And we get the general's second line in the movie to blow it is, when they're going to everyone's opinion of what should happen, they get to the general, and he says, must float like leaf on river of life.
And kill old lady.
And so then they decide to draw lots, and it kind of becomes a 10 Little Indians as each of them try to dispatch of the old lady and fail. But it's not just that. We get unexpected things throughout.
Yep.
We get an amazing shot of Marlon Wayans creeping into her living room and it transforming into his living room as a child in the 70s and him getting slapped by his own mother.
His grandma.
His grandma and one of his siblings saying, aren't you going to use the strap on?
No, you were right. It is his mother.
Yeah, he's like, Mama, he wants to keep a dog home, and she starts slapping him with a pillow and maybe her hand and telling him that wait till his dad gets home. And then you see cut away to two of small children watching him get beat, and one of them says, ain't you going to use the strap on him, Ma?
Which is an attitude that I wish more people would have toward Marlon Wayans.
But this was only child Marlon Wayans. It wasn't the. It was.
They
got a pretty good child actor.
Not the kid. Not the kid who played him.
The real Marlon Wayans needs a strap.
Well,
saying
the real Marlon Wayans just needs to stop acting and go away.
Not whipped on the back like a runaway slave. Is
No,
what you're saying?
not at all.
Okay.
No, I just want him to stop acting.
So then we also get another one of a side track wherein, I'll just say it, Garth Pancake tries to steal the loot with Mountain Girl. And the reason I want to blow this is, did you notice that they've decided to keep all of the money in this big, huge double guitar harp loot case thing they have, and when Tom Hanks starts to suspect maybe not all's on the up and up, he opens it and it's just filled with old copies of various Mother Jones magazine editions. Apparently Garth has had a Mother Jones subscription for years.
Well, and it was about to pay off, but it doesn't quite. Before we get to that point, though, the Ladykillers start running into some trouble because Garth and Gawain can't actually go through with the whole assassination.
So we want to reveal,
Oh, do we want to?
I was going to kind of not reveal, but we might as well.
We don't have to. We don't have to if you don't want to.
Did this have your third laugh?
My third laugh is in here.
Okay.
All I will say, if we don't want to go into this,
go into it. I don't care.
No. All I will say is we'll leave the Ladykillers. We'll leave the actual plot to.
I just want to leave out the order that they. They fail.
Yeah, and all the twists and turns that go in there. All I will say is that the third laugh came in the run-up to the events that led immediately to one of the characters' failures. In particular, the
You
part
can say
that
who failed, because they all fail. Like,
They
we
do.
can spoil that
yes,
no one kills the old
Miss
lady.
Munson lives, yeah.
Yeah.
In particular, the part that involves a set of dentures.
Oh yes, that was very funny.
And that one did get me because I saw those on the nightstand. I didn't even think about it. And it's one of those things, it hit me, and it hit me hard, and it hit me just perfectly. Yeah, but that was number 3.
The dentures, yeah, it was very gross and funny.
It really was. I'm laughing just thinking about it.
Yeah, something happens with one of the would-be lady killers and some dentures. But yes, they each fail, and they're each dispatched. Their failures all end up with them dying.
Yeah.
And when each one of them dies, the remaining guys take the body to a bridge and drop it as the garbage barge. They've timed out apparently, or maybe it makes several trips a day, and they drop the bodies on these floating garbage barges, ships that are taking garbage to the garbage island. So these trash guys who are going for their worldly loot, or one at a time, just become trash themselves.
Yep. Why, it's just like that preacher said.
Yeah.
And
of course it winnows down to Tom Hanks.
And one other character whom I don't think we didn't mention. But of course Tom Hanks is going to be one of the last ones standing.
Yes.
Because he's the star of the movie.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, we know, we can see that coming.
Yeah, that one was not hard. You might not see the other character who's with him on that bridge.
That may not be who you expect, yeah.
In fact, well, maybe now that we've said it, probably won't be who you expect now. It might be.
Yeah.
Who knows? Because you'll figure it out. All of the characters fail. All of the characters go away. And do we want to talk about what happens at the end? Because I actually kind of like this twist.
Yeah, I think we should talk about it.
Because it's a nice bookend. I like films that do a nice bookend.
Yeah, I do want to wrap it up. The only thing I didn't want to reveal was the order in which the characters
I think that's fair.
Yeah, because that's like some of the fun of seeing who will draw the short lot.
Yes, you're right. That is, after all, what you go to the Ladykillers for, is to see.
Yeah, so we can reveal the ending. After all of the Ladykillers are dead.
Yes.
Irma P. Hall is left with the loot.
Yes, all of it. And she goes, as she did at the beginning of the film, to the sheriff's office to register a complaint. Because she walks in and says, I know where all this money is in the casino. They don't initially want to hear anything she has to say, because they're like, we have an emergency. We have 7 figures worth of money that's been stolen from the casino. And she says, I know where it is. I have it. And that gets their attention for just a second. And then she starts explaining how she has it. And it has to do with that professor that they haven't seen. And a whole bunch of other people that they haven't seen in her basement playing musical instruments. And
we know that she's talked to the sheriff about this invisible professor before.
Yes, and this is where I say this is what I like, when these moments, again, in a less structured script, that moment with the sheriff from earlier when she's trying to introduce him to Tom Hanks would never come back around. Here it does, because it is the thing that makes him decide she is finally cracked, and it's all the way gone. And so just humoring her, because he just wants her to go away.
Yeah, she wants to know what to do with this money.
Yep. He says,
why don't you keep it? Me keep it? And he's like, yeah, why? And then the deputy's like, yeah, why don't you do that, Ms. Munson?
Yeah, that's fair.
You keep it.
You fair. That's fair. And then she gets the bright idea, what if I donated it all
to Bob Jones University? I think that's a good idea.
Yep. And they have no idea that they have just failed to solve the case. Literally, the solution walked right into their office. Nope. And now Bob Jones University is going to get a really nice endowment.
But first she walks home, waddles home, and as she goes in, Pickles gets out again.
Oh, that darn Pickles.
But this time, Pickles has something in his mouth, and it's the one missing piece from these criminals.
Yes.
J.K. Simmons's finger. It carries it all the way to the bridge, which we know it knows where the trash bridge is because one time it went with them in their hearse when they dumped a body or dumped some dirt out into the garbage barges when they were tunneling. So it runs all the way to the bridge and dumps Garth Pancake's finger out of its mouth into the garbage bridge to go to the trash island and join its owner in eternity. So there is no evidence anymore that Mrs. Munson housed these Ladykillers. They're all dead and gone, and Bob Jones University is getting
the greatest endowment in their history, possibly.
The end.
The end.
But I think the last shot of the movie is the trash island.
It is.
Now, first off,
yeah,
I've said so many, you can tell with the enthusiasm in my voice, I love this movie.
Yes.
And I've mostly concentrated on what is good about it to me. I have some reservations.
Okay.
Not just the puns, but there is another running gag in this movie of, like in a cartoon, the expression of Othar, her dead husband, changes on this painting. And every time it does it, it's like a fart. It is the worst. Like, it was too much the first time, and then they just keep going. I mean, and obviously once they do it once, they have to keep doing it, or it would just be weird.
It would not be a running gag.
Yeah, it would just be weird, and it's so bad. And then on top of that, this movie has many a Coen Brothers film of that period does, it seems like. It has some dodgy CG, and as great as a cinematographer as Roger Deakins is, there's some weird element of focus and haziness to this movie that is not all the time pleasurable, and sometimes is there's a distracting element to the photography in the movie at times, although other times it's quite spectacular.
Yeah, I gotta say, I didn't notice that. To me, I think at the
theater I thought that at times the film might be slightly out of focus, and then I realized when I got it on DVD, I was like, oh no, that's not how it's supposed to look.
No, I took it to just be they're trying to recreate the old, like, Technicolor vibe, but with modern camera technology.
I love the color schemes of the film.
This is a colorful movie. Of the three we watched, clearly, I mean, one of them is in black and white and the other one is A Man Called Otto. But it's just so nice, and that's one of the things, to bring this back around to A Man Called Uve for just a minute. A Man Called Uve has color.
Whoa.
It actually, I don't know what it is about modern American cinematography that they just feel the need, if there's like a really dramatic subject, to wash out
it's
their
so
color.
Bad, man.
I hate it.
In this movie, like in A Man Called Otto, they had an idea, and it was such a basic and dumb idea. It was like, in Otto's depressed world, everything is dreary looking. And then in his flashbacks to when his wife was alive, everything's filled with color and beautiful. The idea fits on the head of a pin, but it makes for an awful looking film, and it's another thing that makes the movie just feel like a shitty commercial.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But you're right. The American movies do this,
and I don't know why. I mean, well, yes, I do. I do know why, because they're trying to make the color of the film convey the message that they want it to convey. I want a film that looks like life. You can convey messages, or better. I mean, that would be the ideal, right? You can convey messages with acting. How about with script writing? How about with, I don't know, editing?
Yeah. No, you're right.
But
the same thing bothers me.
Stop washing out your damn films, people, because it's driving me nuts.
Yeah, it's not fun to look at.
No. And I'm not saying everything has to be pleasurable to look at, but I would like to see some color on the big screen. And I will give the Ladykillers this. I've said I laughed 3 times in the Ladykillers. That's true. I also said I smiled a fair few times. But
how'd you like the movie?
Yeah. It's a mild thumbs down from me. I hate to say that. I do. Because there were parts of this movie that were conceptually... I saw what they were going for, and I liked it. But overall, it just didn't work for me. And I wonder how much of this is baggage that I did carry into this movie. Because I'm sure that you, when you were growing up, like I did, you went to see some Tom Hanks movies. movies.
Oh yeah.
Because he was in all of the big movies, right? So, but when I think about Tom Hanks's career, you know, I think about he had a huge stretch of mostly very, very successful blockbusters. And just kind of going down the list, he had A League of Their Own. The next year was Sleepless in Seattle. The next year was Forrest Gump. The next year was Apollo 13. And then Toy Story was also that year. A couple of years later, you've got Saving Private Ryan, and you've got Mail.
The Green
Mile, then Castaway, which I know gets kind of mixed reviews. I really liked it, but I know that that's not a majority opinion. A couple years after that, Catch Me If You Can. And there were a couple of like misfires in there, but for the most part, for that like 10-year stretch, it seemed like Tom Hanks could do no wrong. Like every year, or at least every couple of years, he would come back to the big screen with something that you felt like you had to see on the big screen. And The Ladykillers is the point where I remember it falling apart for me. I watched the trailer. I can't remember what I was going to see, but I saw the trailer for The Ladykillers in front of it, and I saw Tom Hanks in that suit doing that accent with that beard, and I was just like, catch you next time, Tom. I'm not doing this. And so I never had seen it until we watched it for this episode. And that's the point after which, though, I look down his filmography, and what do you have? The Terminal, kind of a misfire. Polar Express, well,
big time misfire.
Doesn't that say it on its own? The Da Vinci Code, I know it was big, but I could spare me on that one.
Same. I hated it.
You know, Charlie Wilson's War, which again I kind of liked.
I'd like to rewatch Charlie's War, but you know, Charlie Wilson's War is much more on the level of this.
Yes.
Maybe with a bigger cast, because it has Julia Roberts and Philip Seymour Hoffman when Philip Seymour Hoffman was alive and already hot.
Yes, it does have, and it is a good movie, but it's also like more of a small scale drama. It's like the magic, and then he hits Larry Crown in 2011.
Wow.
And I'm
so
like,
already there.
The magic is gone. Like, for 10 years, Tom Hanks was America's movie star.
I forget there was Toy Story 2 and Toy Story 3.
That's true. And I know I mentioned Toy Story earlier, but is he really the chief attraction, or is that Pixar?
It's probably Pixar.
Because that's what is Tom Hanks, maybe this is a good way to kind of start wrapping things up. Is Tom Hanks still a movie star? Because he was.
I think the answer with A Man Called Otto is yes.
Yes, I think that's fair.
And I think it was fair to ask that until A Man Called Otto. This is a star vehicle that is successful right now in the way that I'm frankly shocked. Like, people are aware of this movie's existence in a way that I don't know that they were aware of a Larry Crown or whatever. Yeah,
I don't think that, I don't remember, I don't know anyone who ever saw Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close.
No,
I don't
know anybody that ever saw Larry Crown.
I went to see Saving Mr. Banks. I went to see It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, or the Mr. Rogers movie.
I saw that on the computer.
But for me, that was still kind of like, Tom Hanks is doing something again. Let's go see it. And neither one of those movies really struck.
I never saw Sully.
I never saw Sully, so I can't speak to that. But neither one of those last two movies really struck a chord with me.
But this movie right here is like A Man Called Otto is some late phase comeback Tom Hanks success already. I'm kind of shocked by it, to be honest.
I am too, because again, for me, just having him in that role kind of spoils the movie a little bit.
Now, as to my order,
anyway,
I would go see, if you have to, see A Man Called Otto, and then use The Ladykillers to wash all that saccharine stuff out of your mouth. That's just like, okay, I saw something that's not for me. Here's something totally for Matt. I love heists. I love comedy. I love silly comedy. I love sophisticated, or what I think is sophisticated, and then I also love silly comedy. And this movie has both. And I love heists.
So I set a mild thumbs down on The Ladykillers, and I feel really bad about that, because even like off-brand Cohen is still pretty dadgum good. As for your double feature, and I have thought a lot about this.
I've been thinking about it too, of whether or not it even works as a double feature.
I think it does. I think it would. For some people, I think it would.
You're going to the same point I am.
It does not for me. at the same time, I didn't hate A Man Called Otto. I didn't hate the Ladykillers. I'm gonna say a thumbs firmly sideways on this one, just for the virtue of, look, this wasn't for me, but I didn't hate watching either of these movies. I had a few laughs at both of them. And for someone whose taste in humor skews more toward one or the other of these two movies, they might really enjoy this double feature. And I can't give it a thumbs down.
So I think that for me, the double feature works because I didn't hate Man Called Otto, and then the two movies are different enough with enough linking elements that really liking the Ladykillers saves it.
Yes.
And makes the whole, and Man Called Otto was pretty watchable, really. But whereas I can prove there's an audience that would like both A Man Called Otto and Ikiru, I'm sitting next to a guy. And so as low as I think that overlap is, I can also think of other people that I know that I would like both movies. But the Ladykillers, Man Called Otto overlap of people that are really going to enjoy both those movies, I don't know if, I think you're looking at people that would be interested would be your Tom Hanks diehards, but I think that your Tom Hanks diehard may not like the Ladykillers.
Well, they certainly didn't seem to. I mean, it did make back its money from what I remember,
Okay.
but not...
I remember it being a flop.
Well, it was kind of a flop, but by Tom Hanks' standards.
Maybe it was just cheap,
think.
and that's how it made its money back.
Yeah, because it didn't do well. Hold on, let me pull this
So I
up.
saw it opening weekend, and it was not a big crowd. There were people in there, though. There were people.
Okay, so...
More maybe than when we saw Babylon.
Yes, definitely. Ladykillers budget $35 million,
Wow,
box
that's a lot.
office $77.
That's a lot of money. Is that worldwide or America?
I think that's worldwide.
Oh, maybe it's not that big a hit then. But still.
But
That's
that
more
would
than I would
mean,
have expected.
I mean, according to the generally accepted rule of thumb about Hollywood accounting, that would mean it made its money back, although it probably just broke even realistically.
With advertising.
Yeah, so it's not a flop. Or it wasn't a flop, except if you look at it by the standards of, from the man who starred in A League of Their Own, Sleepless in Seattle, Apollo 13, Catch Me If You Can, Saving Private Ryan. If you look at that, then in the context of his career to that point, yeah, it's a flop. But for a lot of other people, it wouldn't have been.
Wouldn't have been a success, though.
No, but I don't think it would be as poorly remembered. I did laugh a few times, and I did smile a few times. And this movie...
Who would you recast Tom Hanks as?
In the Ladykillers?
Yeah.
Harry Melling. No, that's not true.
John Cusack might have been good.
You know, he might have brought that sort
He's
of
great
manic energy.
I mean, we talk about how great he is or I talk about how great he is as a comedic, as a romantic lead. I think his other specialty is film noir. And he should have at this point been in a Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah. I mean, I can't think of another big star that I would put in here. And Tom Hanks is doing... I do appreciate the ability of Tom Hanks to want to do other things.
What about Bill Murray? What about Tim Allen?
Ooh.
That might have been pretty good.
Tim Allen in the late... Yeah, I could see that. Bill Murray, I could see doing this part, but he would be too smarmy.
Yeah, maybe it's too really verbose for one of his characters, even though he talks a lot in other movies. But
yeah, but
it's hard to see him taking himself seriously doing that dialogue.
But Tim Allen, maybe I could see that. I'd kind of like to see Nathan Fillion take a crack at it. Although he's not a big, like, that would be... I would like to see that. That might be interesting.
Harder to get funded.
Much harder. And you certainly wouldn't get it funded to the tune of $35 million. No way. It would be a lower price tag movie. Like I said, I had a good time.
What about Tim Meadows?
I don't know that I would want to cast a black actor in that
Yeah,
role.
it kind of needs to be a white guy.
It really does. Because of the dynamic it relies on.
It really does need to be a white guy.
I don't want to be that guy who offers the hot take about the Ladykillers has something valuable to say about race relations in the modern American South, because it doesn't really...
It doesn't, but having him be white and her black adds to it.
It really does. It's... You know,
and Marlon Wayans being black is an important part. So if Marlon Wayans' character has to be black, then the other guys can't be black in the group.
Yes, and
because of the Freedom Rider stuff.
And J.K. Simmons has to be, and the general has to be from Vietnam.
yeah.
And Lump has to be I guess Lump can be anything.
He can't be black, though. That's the one thing is, like, the guys in the group, for J.K. Simmons' jokes to work, Marlon Wayans has to be the only black guy.
Yes.
Because otherwise he wouldn't talk about, you know, the Freedom Riders and all that. It would be more like there'd be other black guys.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So, for me, Irma P. Hall, like,
she is perfect in the movie.
Oh, so great. And I smiled at that last line. What if I just gave it all to Bob Jones' universe? She bites off every syllable of that. And I'm like, yes, perfect. You go, Irma. I love it. I love that line. That was a great line.
Just so the Coen brothers are such masters of casting. Having George Wallace as this lazy Southern sheriff,
always perfect. Anything else about the Ladykillers? Oh, how would we rank these? We got to do that.
Oh yeah, we didn't rank them this week. I'd rank Ladykillers number 1, and then. The more we've talked about it, I think I got to give Ikiru number 2, and then Man from Otto number 3. But it's kind of close for me because Ikiru is way too long, and Man from Otto is just such a saccharine.
Yes. Again, perfect.
And I have a hard time with that.
For me,
I don't like being bored, and I don't like being like, ugh.
Yeah, for me, and I think I made this clear, Ikiru is the clear number 1 for me. Number 2, and I am surprised about this, would be the Ladykillers. Despite the fact that I gave it a mild thumbs down.
You've been talking to
and I gave A Man Called Otto a mild thumbs up, and I stand by those ratings.
I like it.
But despite the fact I'm going against my own thumb right now, but I feel like I have to, because A Man Called Otto is something I've seen before, and I've seen it better. And I have never seen anything. I never saw the original.
It's good.
I'm sure it's
It's quite different.
I'm sure it is. But I've never seen the original, so I had nothing to compare it with. I did not hate it, and I've never seen anything quite like the Ladykillers. So that's my Ikiru, the Ladykillers, and then actually Ikiru, A Man Called Uve, the Ladykillers, and then A Man Called Otto. I'm sorry, Tom. It's just not. Yeah. Anyway, so Matt, how's Annie?
Yeah, I've got no expectations.
See you next time, guys.
I disappointed you with that. I couldn't think of anything.